West. And it's the date today is the 1st of May. I realise that we normally do this on Tuesday, but we had a clash of a diary clash, so we are moved to May the 1st. So that's why we are here on a Wednesday rather than a Tuesday. Right. Okay. I'm not sure if is that any better? Can the members of the public hear me? Right. Okay. Right. So. Okay. Is this any better? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. That's what we'll do then. I'll use this one. Now I've got one that works. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, well, for those that you don't know me, my name's Simon Colston. I'm chair of this committee, and we are not expecting any fire drills today. So if you hear a fire alarm, please exit through the fire exits and follow the green signs. And the safe spot for gathering afterwards is at the back of the building. So if that were to happen, then please exit safely. I'm not loud enough. Apparently I'm not loud enough. Is that okay? Hang on a second. We'll try and find some technicians. Thank you. Somebody's gone off to see if we can find a technician to improve. We're going to start the meeting proper now, a few minutes late, but thank you. Item 1, apologies have been received from Councillor Mike Rigby and Councillor Henley. I have not been made aware of any substitution. I'm not aware of any other substitutions or apologies. Does anybody know anything different from that? No? Okay, thank you. Item 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting. Is it your wish that I sign those from the meeting the 19th of March 24? And I need a proposer and a seconder, please. A proposer and seconder, so it's Gwyl and then Andy Sully. And can I see those in favour, please? Lovely, that's unanimous. Thank you. I will sign those as a true record. Councillor Hadley, I believe you wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick comment regarding an application that was debated at the last meeting. Whilst debating the planning application 3/21/23/088 for the bull stop netting at land off Seawood Way, I made a comment to say that it was a shame that the cricket club would not give permission to allow the netting to be put on the original proposed position. I've since been informed that the cricket club are not the landowners and therefore could not give permission, and for this I apologise to the cricket club for any distress that was caused. I do, however, stand by the sentiment of my comments that if the landholder had given permission to place the nets in the original position, it would have been a much better outcome for the new homeowners.
Okay, and I would hope that that is going to be duly minuted. Thank you very much. Okay, item 3 on our agenda, declarations of interest. And I'll start from the chair, if I may. I received an email with attachments, and I was then subsequently called by one of the agents for item item 7, 49/20/0034. I didn't engage in much conversation other than to acknowledge that I had received and read the document that was sent to me. I'm assuming you all received that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you all got a phone call as well. Okay. Okay. So if that could be duly noted. Are there any other? Yes, Norm.
Item 6, other disclosable interests, and I will leave the room.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. Rosemary.
Item 8, I will declare a pecuniary interest and leave room.
Thank you. Gwyl.
Make sure I got the item numbers right. The first one is number 5, which we're debating first. Now, I made I was at the Ninehead Parish Council meeting, which debated this application. It is not in Ninehead Parish. It is not in my ward, but nonetheless, it does have an impact on the local community. I wrote in, I supported the comments in relation to the access made by the Parish Council. I do not believe this has fettered my discretion. I had a discussion with the solicitor about it, and I believe I'm free to take part in the debate, particularly as the report has clarified some of the issues around the access, much to the better, shall we say. The second one, the Wiveliscombe one, I can't remember what the number is, if you bear with me. Is that number 7 is in my ward, but I've had no engagement with it other than reading the planning report. And I think the last one is 9. That is adjacent to my ward, and Bradford-on-Tone Parish Council, I think, has commented on it, but I was not at the meeting, so I'm not aware, other than reading the report, what's gone on.
Okay, thank you for taking the opportunity and to speak with the solicitor. It's always advisable, in my view. It's always that as well, but it's also always advisable. Karen.
This is just for the avoidance of doubt. Item number 9, Gables Wellington Road, is in my division. And I was at the Bishop's Hole Parish Council where it was discussed. I also attended the public meeting where residents were discussing it, but I made very clear at that public meeting, I am not predetermined. I was there just to listen. So we had, you know, more in favour views at Bishop's Hole and then less so at the public meeting. But I was very clear to say that I was just there because it's in my patch and you've got to listen to people. So I am not predetermined on that one at all. Open mind.
Thank you for that. Any other declarations? I've not missed anybody, I don't think. No, not seeing any. Okay, item 4, public question time. There are no public questions. Okay, item 5, which is application 43/23/0056, which is land to the north of Taunton Road, Wellington. And the planning officer is Simon Fox. Simon, good afternoon and welcome. And I'd be pleased to hear your report.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Simon Fox. I'm the Major Projects Officer here at Somerset Council. And today I'm presenting this item, item 5, planning application 43230056. It's an outline application with all matters reserved, except for access, for a mixed-use development of up to 200 dwellings, employment land in use classes at E and F, an internal spine road to facilitate a halt/station, public open space, drainage and associated infrastructure on land north of Taunton Road, aka Longforth Park in Wellington. And this application has been advertised as a departure from the local plan for reasons explained in my report. So just to kick off this presentation, I've got a number of slides which I'll go through and then invite questions from members. So hopefully members have cured their insomnia by reading my report over the last week and a half. Hopefully it will address many of the issues that have been raised by members of the public, parishes, town council, etc. But we'll just go through some slides so that what you've read now comes into reality. You can put place to the words that I've written. So the application site is illustrated on this aerial view of Wellington by the red dot. If I switch to the pointer, do that. Oh, have I not done that either? Oh, I thought I'd done that. Sorry, I thought I'd done that. This one. Right. Okay. So the red point here is hovering over a red mark, which is the centre of the application site along the northern edge of Wellington. This is Taunton Road here, which connects down into Chelston and then onwards to the A38 towards Taunton and towards the M5. Also of note from this wider perspective is the relationship both to the railway line, which you can see emanating in the top right-hand corner here, sweeping down through past and bordering the northern edge of the application site, and then continuing through Wellington. The former station was located here, near Tonedale, and then continuing out towards the to the west. So the application site being here, we have pockets of landscaping towards the north, and this denotes the edge of the registered parking garden to Ninehead Court, which is located here. Ninehead Court is a listed building. It's a grade 2 star, and the area of parkland between Ninehead Court and this wooded area, and indeed up to this former canal route, is also registered parking garden. Ninehead, also to the north here, is within a conservation area, and that overlaps the registered parking garden in certain localities. Just to the north of the railway line and on the railway line, we have other heritage assets, which include the canal boat lift, the aqueduct, which served the former canal, and also a railway bridge, which carries the current live railway line, and the lodge constructed by Brunel. We have Ninehead Road to the east here, which connects the Cades roundabout to the village of Ninehead with Taunton Road, and then along the south is Taunton Road, and then that meets a roundabout that serves Lillibong Way, that serves the Blore development, which is referenced in my report, which is phase 1 of this allocation. As is evident by this lozenge on my plan here, there is already a supermarket that's been built on, I don't know if you can say one corner of a roundabout, but on one side of the roundabout, which will become evident through some of the plans that I show you. So that gives you the town-wide perspective and the greater locality. So this is the red line site of the application, fairly irregular in shape, bound by Lodge Copse to the east, the railway line to the north, and then Hobby Copse, which is to the sort of north west of the site. And then this area here, which is actually a bit more visible on the illustrative master plan, which replicates that red line, this field in the middle, which throughout my report is coined as the ecology field. And that is because of this tree, which is located in that field, and that is the tree with the significant bat roost in it, which we will be hearing a lot about today, and has been a key matter for my report to understand, assess, and consider. So that's the ecology field, and that acts as a green part of the green wedge, which extends further south and obviously extends north towards the registered parking garden. And the reason it is not being developed is because of that tree and because of that bat roost. However, part of the field has been assigned as public open space for the benefit of the residents of this proposed development. And the field is to be divided in half by way of a bund and hedgerow inclusive of trees to create a sort of discrete and sensitively detailed area, secure area, which hasn't got public access in this blue area, so that the bats are not disturbed any further than they need to be. This is a change from the original set of plans, in where this was allocated all as open space, and we feel that the approach here safeguards the resident bat population. And I'll come back to that issue later on in my presentation. So generally here we have the indicative master plan. As I said in my introduction, this is an outline application with only access to be approved at this point, and that's the access point here onto Ninehead Road. And for those who know the site, that access already exists because it serves the supermarket which has been built on this part of the site. The remainder of the layout is predicated on a spine road which runs diagonally across the site. This main bulk of the site are the residential dwellings, and then to the sort of the latter half of the latter third of the site is where the employment is located. This field where the road runs out into is the field which has been earmarked for the car park to serve the future railway station. and the GWRN sign here on the railway line is indicative of where those platforms will be located. The station and the car park, as my report indicates, will be subject to a different application at a later point. Therefore, this development is critical in delivering the infrastructure, utilities, and access to the future proposed railway station. Alongside the railway station site, we have developed a station square, which is an area of public realm to create a sense of welcoming to Wellington for those stepping off the train. This will also double up as a mobility hub for the station, which will include high quality cycle storage, public realm paving materials, landscape, public art, and I'll come back to that later on in my presentation also. The site also has connections onto Taunton Road, and that's primarily via this cycleway footway, which runs along the western edge of the site to connect Taunton Road to the station square and therefore then the station. However, connectivity is somewhat restricted by the constraint of the ecology field. And you may think that there are desire lines to go from every corner of here through this field to get to the station in a more sort of as the crow flies direction. However, the constraints that the ecology field brings means that we have strayed away from providing those accesses and movement corridors through this field in order that the bat habitat can be safeguarded. Once you introduce formal paths inviting the general public to walk through to a destination like the station, you bring issues such as surveillance, lighting, and things like this. And these are all matters that are not conducive to the bat habitat. Therefore, the principal non-road method of getting to the station will be via this point here, and obviously cycleway, footway linkages that are aligned to the spine road as well. The allotments here that are being set out presently by the town council is land that was gifted by Bloor Homes as part of their development, which form phase 1 of the Longforth allocation. And just to the bottom of the slide here, you can see the Isambard Kingdom Brunel Primary School, which is also open and receiving pupils. That's probably it for now. So these are some other plans that illustrate the proposal. Primarily, this shows the area of open space in the ecology field. So as previously indicated, this area of public open space will be managed in a very informal manner. This is not an area that's going to be mown within an inch of its life. This is an area that's going to be fairly naturalistic to further extend that habitat. And all of these trees that you can see superimposed in the blue area and in the green are all new. Effectively, this tree here, the bat tree, if I call it that, is the only tree in this field, apart from around the edge. So these are all new trees as well to further enhance that habitat. Furthermore, my report indicates provision of a woodland on the north side of the railway line, and that is this area in red. Now, this extends to around just shy of 11 acres of woodland to provide additional habitat for the bats. Clearly, there is an issue with the incremental encroachment in this area by reason of the Bloor development to the west and this proposed development to the east. And it's fair to say that right from the get-go on this application, the council's ecologist, Tobias Palmer, has been heavily engaged in dialogue with the applicant and the applicant's ecological consultant around how to ensure that the favourable status of the bat roost is maintained. And the approach has been to create a linkage of tree and woodland planting from the roost with this additional planting in the ecology field, utilising hobby copse as a stepping stone to then this very significant area of woodland planting on the north side, which in itself then links to this band of planting called long copse, which takes you further out into the countryside. If you look at that area of red and sort of notionally superimpose that over the development site, it does represent a significant land take. And no doubt this discussion this afternoon will venture into the dreaded V word, viability. And these are the sorts of costs and requirements this site has required in order to be deliverable. The orange area replicates Station Square, the blue area, the employment areas, the sort of teal area, the surface water, drainage infrastructure, and obviously the balance is some housing, and we need some housing for all this to work. This again sort of represents that same slide in a slightly different way, so I'll just gloss over that, but that effectively shows the balance of green space to residential floor space. So I referred to the access point. This is a drawing of that access point. You will have noted in my report there have been representations made about the junction, which has been in place since the opening of the supermarket. There have been some reported local issues around self-cancelling indicators. And my report gives some commentary as to the position of the Highway Authority with regard to this existing and proposed access. Fundamentally, there is another option, which is the continuous road option, which addresses some of those issues and is preferable in terms of active travel connections. However, this does rely on third-party land take from the supermarket. And so the way that we have lined this up is that the application is proposed to be approved on this basis, but the Section 106 will include the option, should the supermarket land come forward, for this continuous road option to be constructed. Now, any suggestion of a ransom will dissipate once a resolution is given. I have been in discussions with the supermarket operator, and they have indicated that this is actually preferred from their point of view as well. So we don't believe that the land take issue will be significant. However, there is an investment needed in some drawings to illustrate this beyond this feasibility stage. So retaining walls, drainage, all those sorts of things. And we didn't want to invest that money now and create a ransom situation. So we've safeguarded money in the viability report to ensure that this junction can be created when that land comes forward. Obviously, if it doesn't come forward, then we leave the junction arrangement as it is, and we make some improvements beyond that in terms of active travel. Now, active travel as an entity is going to be well provided by the Section 106, insofar as a large sum of money has been chiselled out of the viability appraisal to ensure that Taunton Road, the Cade roundabout, and the access into the sites can receive high quality cycle infrastructure. The way that we have lined this part of the scheme up is that that money would be received by the council and pooled with other monies, and the council implement a comprehensive scheme of active travel along the Taunton Road to Chelston town centre corridor. This ensures that we achieve best value for money, that we don't implement a scheme that we then rip up because something else comes along, and we have a long-term plan for this important corridor, especially considering the future prospects of a railway station and obviously the existing presence of this supermarket, which we could better link. So that is the approach. And because of the timescales that the railway station provision is being worked to, then it's likely that work on that active travel scheme would commence in earnest immediately upon the resolution of this application and the signing of the section 106. Just to give you an idea of the timescales here, we're aiming to facilitate this road in time for the railway station to open in May or June of 2026. This is just to give an idea of the onward connectivity around Taunton Road. However, this is indicative and will be effectively refreshed and re-looked at via the Highway Authority when that corridor study is undertaken. But pretty much it's predicated on extending cycle linkages and creating this cycleway into the southwest corner of the site, providing that northerly connection right up to the railway station. This is the first of several parameter plans, just to illustrate the heights of various buildings within the site. So nothing on this site would be higher than 3-storey and only in specified locations. This is a density plan which shows higher density around the roads and lower density beyond. And this plan shows the main connections which I've talked through already. There is a specific condition that rules out this green linkage for the reasons I previously explained in terms of trying to safeguard that bat habitat even further. So this plan is indicative, but that green line is one that we don't support and therefore will be conditioned out. So just returning to the master plan, we have the woodland area on the north. This logo here indicates a future refuge area for the railway. So if there was ever an incident on the railway, then passengers would be effectively moved to this area away from the embankment. Now that's not necessarily approved by this application. Well, it's not approved by this application today, should you choose to support the officer's recommendation. It's just an indication as to why that hasn't been planted out, and that will be part of the station application at a later date. So this was the original master plan, which, as I have indicated, illustrated this as a fully accessible park with the railway station car park and land surrounding it, buildings surrounding it. Because of the reasons that I've explained, we've revised the POS offering in the ecology field, and it was felt better that the Network Rail car park was better as part of the operational part of the station application. So that's why that was omitted. And with that, the buildings around it got omitted as well to allow the car park design to flex. What's happened since is that car park is now moved right up against Hobby Copse. So what will happen is the car park will only take up a bit of the field that is illustrated here, and there will be a strip of development along the southern edge, which will come forward as a future application once the final details of the car park are known and once we know how much land there is left to play with. So in the ecology field, as I've indicated, we have now separated it in half, and actually the rest of that field is largely bunded and planted, and those hedges have taken extremely well over the last sort of 5 to 10 years as part of the Blore development. So the idea is to replicate that with a bund, with planting, a fence, which will also enclose the rest of the site and ensure that there is no public access. This height also helps block any light pollution and any other activity in the wider area to that field. So I've mentioned Station Square, and this has been a matter that has also been developed through the course of this planning application when it became evident that the Network Rail car park was going to be just that, a car park. And we felt that achieving a railway station for Wellington in of itself was significant, but we wanted it to be a really, really good station and be a really good advert for Wellington and for this part of the county. And so working with the developer, we developed this concept of a station square, which will sit alongside the car park, which you can see sort of grade, sort of slightly faded out here. And what this will do is we'll create a focal point, a area of public realm by which people would dwell, hopefully act as a pickup point, a point of reference really in the town and with regard to the station, and also receive the key active travel linkages from along the Spine Road and from that combined footway cycleway from the south, all converging on this square, which will be, as these sort of images indicate, would be landscaped with planting, with tree planting, and also maybe rain gardens, street furniture, so that people can actually sit down. This might seem bizarre, but there are few luxuries in modern railway stations, and therefore somewhere to sit down and watch the trains go by, I think, will be a nice place to be. It will also include high quality cycle storage as part of a mobility hub. Now, this plan is indicative, it's a working drawing, and that is because we have developed a situation whereby this application has been proceeding to this stage, but in order to start designing the road and ensure and assure Network Rail that this is all going to be delivered on time, some preliminary work on the design of the road and the station square has already commenced in order to maintain the timescales that we're working to. So this is actually a more worked up drawing from the master plan drawing that I've previously shown you. And this sketch developed by the developer's landscape architect will form the basis of an ongoing discussion with Wellington Town Council, who recently resolved to adopt and maintain and manage this station square as part of the wider POS of this development. So I think that's a really positive outcome from this. In terms of public art, which I know you're waiting for me to talk about, something rather unique and unusual. It's the reclaimed top of the Wellington Monument, which will be presented as a focal point within this square. And I think that's an exciting reclamation job and something that will really set this space apart from many others. So that's a work in progress. It's to give you a flavour and an idea of the concept that we're trying to work to, and also in part to try and justify the money in the viability exercise that we've set aside for this. Because if we don't do it through the viability exercise, then it doesn't happen, and I think that would be sad for the station. It will be the photo that everyone takes of the station when it's open, and it will be branded accordingly. And I'm really enthused by Wellington Town Council taking a proactive role in this, and that means that in the future it can evolve and become a greater space for the town. So just to get our bearings again, this is the supermarket in blue, the allotments in indicated by the star. This area on the other side of Lillibong Way has been earmarked for playing pitches. However, as is normally the case with these things, it's shy of vital funds to get that project up and going. The 106 Appendix 1 heads of terms indicates money to top up that pot, which means that a playing field and laid out football pitches can be delivered on this part of the site as well, which would be really positive for the area. And there is some money set aside for the allotments as well, should it be necessary. If it's not necessary on this site, then that money can be used elsewhere in the town to provide allotment provision or enhance current provision. So just some photographs of the general area. This is the Cades roundabout. You can see the supermarket here and the red car accessing the site. As we just turn to look up Taunton Road towards the town centre, you can see the general infrastructure that exists in terms of crossing the cycleway, which is off road at this point. It then goes on road. And you can see where that infrastructure then puts you out into the highway. And I think this whole connection is part of the reason why we've allocated the money we have to try and make sure this site is well connected and better connected than this currently illustrates. It also shows you the distance between the roundabout and the junction, which is the issue around the self-cancelling indicators, which are referenced in my report. This shows the extent of the road that was approved as part of the supermarket scheme and will be extended as part of this application. Now, what you will see from this photograph is that the road is directed straight towards 2 trees. Those 2 trees are protected, and the reality is that the right-hand one, the northern one, cannot be retained because the road would have to do something of a dive around to safeguard it. Now, that is regrettable. However, I do feel I've been dealt a certain card by this road being delivered to this extent in this alignment, knowing it's going to go through the hedge and beyond. What we can do is safeguard the left-hand one, which is the southern most of the 2, and ensure that that is protected accordingly during the construction. In lieu of the felling of the right-hand one, then there is a planning condition which seeks suitable replacements on a ratio of 1 to 3. This is the area just to the right or north of the access road. This shows that first pocket of development alongside Ninehead Road. And then just swinging back, you can see the sort of relationship with the motorhome park, which is Cadeside Caravan and Motorhome Club campsite, which sits on the other side of Ninehead Road. Flipping back up onto Taunton Road, just to give a flavour of that current cycle infrastructure, you can see a bus stop and shelter on the southern side. Just looking up Taunton Road, again another shelter on the northern side of that road, and you can see here the cycle infrastructure which we seek to improve. The busy road, it can't be too pleasurable cycling along this unsegregated cycleway. This goes up to Lillibong Way, and then looking back, this is where the connection is into the site that leads due north up to the station square and the station. So in the site, this is the ecology field. This is the Batroost tree. You can see its relationship to the edge of the Blore development and the general boundary treatment to that ecology field, which is well established. In the site, this is looking north towards the railway line, which is in the foreground, and the long copse, that long extent of landscaping to the north of the railway is shown in the background. A train. This is the site panning around. This is one of the 2 significant dividing hedges that run diagonally across the site. And then just looking back towards where the station will be located, which is sort of in this area here. This is then looking up towards Taunton Road. Again, you can see that established hedgerow. This is where the cycleway, footway would come off of Taunton Road, running north. Just to give you a lie of the land, really, it gently slopes down towards the railway embankment, supermarket. And then I've been permitted to show these slides by Network Rail just to give an indication of the actual station, which is, like I say, subject to a future application, but this generally shows the arrangement of platforms and footbridge. And then this is the car park, which I think illustrates and demonstrates why we have pursued Station Square as a direct response to this as a piece of urban design. This is the extent of the mobility hub that was being provided, which was 20 cycle stands in a covered shelter. Effectively, our Station Square now overlaps this and absorbs this land, and will have the much more substantial cycle hub parking that was shown on that sketch. So in terms of updates to my report, the application was amended because of the removal of the car park and the bordering development from 220 homes down to 200 homes. Strangely enough, the education ask went up when I reduced the number of homes. However, as you have seen through my report, the viability exercise has indicated that the full extent of the education contribution cannot be secured at whatever figure it is. and therefore a residual figure of 573,000 is the offer in terms of education provision. Just on the right here is a quote from the Education Authority in terms of that reduction. So they're laying down a marker that obviously future, a viability exercise can largely be swallowed on one scheme, but if it becomes a more widespread issue, then there could be issues with school place planning in Wellington. Further updates include an additional heads of terms, which would form another part of Appendix 1. And this is to secure the Network Rail car park land and access. So it's a 3-part requirement to secure a prescribed area of land to be shown on a plan in the legal agreement for the purposes of the railway station car park, to secure temporary rights for compounds and haul roads for the purposes of constructing the above to be shown on a plan in the legal agreement, and an easement or rights of access over the access road from Ninehead Road to the car park, the extent of which to be shown in the legal agreement. And this is to absolutely belt and brace to Network Rail and to central government that the developer and this council can deliver the road in whatever circumstances may unfold from here, to ensure that road is there on day one of the railway station requiring that access. There's also clarification around the travel plan requirements and some figures around the various elements of the travel plan. Condition 3 is to be updated to reflect the red line change. Now, this was a minimal red line change that we didn't feel required full public reconsultation. It's a small deviation around Station Square, but effectively all those plans have been nudged on a revision from their stated references in my report. And then an additional phasing condition is proposed to ensure that this development can be phased and uncouple some of the condition requirements from the delivery of the road. So this ensures that we're focused on the delivery of the road as early as possible without having to worry about what bricks we're going to use on the houses, for example, and other conditions of that ilk. So in terms of the main considerations, drawing out the main elements of my report, the benefits of securing a road and land for a railway station perhaps cannot be understated. There are a host of planning obligations being secured despite the viability challenge. And of course, it's somewhat in our nature to reflect on what we're not getting. But I think when you look at Appendix 1 and see what we are getting and what that means for Wellington and the surrounding area, then it's still a significant set of obligations. We are getting, if approved, 200 homes towards the council's 5-year housing land supply. We are getting some employment land. Now, in terms of issues, the principle of development is obviously a significant issue that's referenced extensively in my report, and the reason for the departure and the interface with the allocation policy. Ecology has been a running theme throughout this application determination, and hopefully through my report and this oral presentation I've given you some indication of the extent to which officers have tried to mitigate that issue as far as possible. Obviously there's always highway issues and active travel elements. We do believe that active travel, this application punches its weight in terms of active travel provisions, with that money coming to Somerset Council to pool with other contributions in the future for a quality corridor. And obviously nutrient neutrality. I've got to this point in my presentation without saying it so far, but it might be a record. But that obviously has been an issue which has largely meant that this is the earliest opportunity we've been able to actually present this application. And the viability appraisal reflects the fact that P credits have had to be secured from an off-site source. Clearly, we would have preferred that money to be used for other planning obligations. However, we can't move past today without nutrient neutrality having been resolved, and therefore it is a means to an end to ensure that we can get the site approved, that we can get the access road reserve matters application moving, that we can start developing the access road, and that we can get the station for Wellington. And against that backdrop, Chair, the recommendation is that planning permission be granted, subject to the approval of the shadow habitats regulation assessment on receipt of a reservation notice, confirming that the required number of P credits have been reserved for the development. Secondly, the completion of the Section 106 agreement based on the heads of terms listed at Appendix 1, and of course the conditions listed at Appendix 2. And with those three things, the decision be delegated to the head of planning. So that's the recommendation, Chair. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. And now I have 6 public speakers. So when I have a list, I'll call them out in the order that I've been given the printed list. When you're ready, if you come up to the public speaking desk, you push the right hand button when you're comfortable, and your 3 minutes start when you start speaking. Now, the first public speaker on my list is Paul Kennedy, please. Mr. Kennedy, welcome to the committee, sir.
Can you hear me? With regard to the Barbastell bat roost, the mitigation proposed and enhancements are entirely based on guesswork. There has not been a single survey of the tree by the developer to date, so the council has no up-to-date baseline to judge the current status of the roost. There is an assertion that works within a roost buffer zone around the tree can take place between November to April, on the presumption that the bats are elsewhere. This presumption is entirely plucked out of thin air and has no basis, as no surveys have taken place to support this. I could argue that if the bats are absent from the tree, then some must be present in another tree, which could easily be the tree within the middle of the proposed development that is already known to be a confirmed bat roost. The council ecologist has proposed tree planting north of the railway line, notwithstanding the restrictions imposed on tree planting by Network Rail. These trees will not be of any use to the bats for 50 years or more. The ecologist states that it is intended for these measures to result in an increase in the number of barbastells using the existing roost. It is not clear how this would happen when habitat already used extensively around the use for commuting by bats will now be off limits to them. Any mitigation for these bats should be on a landscape scale. The bats will be effectively surrounded on 3 sides by development. Indeed, the developer intends on bringing forward another application in due course, immediately to the west of the proposed mitigation planting, which will then destroy any imagined beneficial effects of the planting. The bats are losing land available to them, but not gaining anything. This will only result in a net loss. Natural England have already declared the species is not in favourable conservation status, and this development will only make it worse, and the council will be failing in their duty towards their conservation by approving this development. Natural England state that the trend towards increasing levels of light pollution in England, especially in rural environments, represents a considerable threat to light-shy bat species, in particular those with highly specialised diets, comprised largely of insect taxa that exhibit strong positive phototaxis. As such, light pollution is expected to pose an increasing threat to barbastell populations in England over the next 50 to 100 years by fragmenting habitats and reducing the availability of preferred moth prey in dark habitats. Plans appear to show that the west edge of the development comprises 3-storey buildings which are likely to cause direct lighting impacts on the roost. There is no lighting plan, so the council is not in a position to assess impacts on bats, and any buffer planting will be completely inadequate in the face of such building heights. Of course, the elephant in the room is the proposed railway station, which will lie directly in the flight path of the bats as they leave the roost. They have nowhere else to go but straight into Hobby Copse, and this will be lit up like a Christmas tree by the rail station and be subject to significant noise from platform tannoys and lights and noise from vehicular traffic. This alone will destroy the access to the roost and other roosts within Hobby Copse itself. Given this proposal is intrinsically linked to the proposed railway station, which will be the final nail in the coffin for this roost, it would be prudent to await Network Rail's final decision and survey results before making a decision on this current application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Simon, was there anything you wanted to come back on there?
Not me personally, but at the given time, Chair, when you deem it suitable, I would like to invite Tobias Palmer, the council's ecologist, who's joined us online, to directly respond to Mr. Kennedy's comments. So I don't know if you want to take other comments or you want to invite Tobias now.
Sorry, I think we'll invite the ecologist to speak now to keep all the comments in a contained way.
Good afternoon. Tobias Palmer here, Somerset County Council ecologist. So my response to the Somerset Bat Group is having consulted with Adam Robbins and Halpin Robbins as the ecological consultants for the site. We feel the survey effort for the site has been more than adequate in and around the site. The site was decided that it wasn't going to be given the status of designation due to a number of limiting factors. And the purpose of the mitigation compensation enhancements for the site are to help remedy a number of the concerns that have been raised, including public access, whereby the hedgerow planting through the centre of the site adjacent to the tree will stop public access entirely to the field around the tree. Planting in and around the tree will take time to establish, as is noted, and looking at the planting scheme to help increase that will be is noted and part of the landscape ecological management plan condition. The planting north of the rail line again will be subject to the landscaping scheme. However, it also helps meet potential future LNRS requirements for future fragmentation and stepping stones environments by linking hobby copse into long copse by including a large area of over 11 acres, as Simon's alluded to, of new woodland habitat, which, yes, will take time to establish, and hoping to get that in as early as possible within the scheme will be beneficial. I do have issue that the Blore development to the immediate west and the primary school development to the south never received objection to this kind or even comment from the Bat Group, and yet this scheme, which is proposing substantial mitigation measures to help hopefully the bats long term, is subject to such disapproval. We did consult with the Bat Group to remedy these situations, and we hope that we can come to some sort of, well, hoping that the resolution through the mitigation and the proposal itself is adequate to meet those needs.
Thanks, Tobias. I think it's also worth just reflecting, as I have in my report, that this site was originally allocated for factory use, and the specific relocation of factories within Wellington that would have not afforded the balance of green space that we've managed to secure through this development. So that is one thing to also bear in mind. And it's also worth just saying for the record that Tobias, myself, did meet with Mr. Kennedy online to discuss his concerns with Halpin Robbins, who are the consultants for this application. So we haven't ignored the situation by any means. We've listened to the representations, verbally, and we've obviously read those that have been committed to writing. And as Tobias has set out, he's guided a set of mitigation measures which he believes are appropriate in this circumstance.
Okay, thank you. The next public speaker on this is Karen Williams from Network Rail. Karen, are you here?
I'm online. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm hoping you can all hear me. So I'd like to speak in
support of... Karen, bear with me a moment. You're very faint. You need to improve that.
Is this any better?
Karen, are you able to turn the volume of your speaker up? We think the issue is at your end.
I can definitely try. Just bear with me a second. Is this any better? Is this better? Can anybody hear me?
Just, so you're going to have to elucidate very clearly.
Okay,
Okay, and we'll need to have hush in the room as well, please.
okay, thank you, Chair. So I speak in support of this outline application on behalf of Network Rail. We've worked extensively with Somerset Council and the West of England developments over the last few years to progress the delivery of a railway station at Wellington. In January 2020, the government pledged 500 million for the Restoring Your Railways Fund to deliver on its manifesto commitment and start reopening lines and stations as part of the Levelling Up agenda. Wellington was included in round one of the Ideas Fund. This focused on identifying schemes that would bring significant socio-economic benefits and had a clear narrative around the proposed services and infrastructure requirements. As part of producing a strategic outline business case, promoters were advised to consider the costs, benefits, disbenefits, and value for money for their scheme. The consent of this scheme will trigger the provision of the spine road and transfer of land for the station car park, as otherwise the station would be landlocked, and it's also important that the station is integrated into the wider development. The stations would be served by one train per hour, which would be by extension of all Cardiff to Taunton services to Exeter St David's, with those services that extend west of England currently being split at Exeter instead of Plymouth. In addition to the above, the provision of a station at Wellington is compliant with the development plan. The formal process to seek funding to deliver the station from the Department for Transport has commenced and is currently going through the necessary governance. Network Rail supports the recommendation of officers to approve this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Simon, is there anything you wanted to comment on?
No, well, I suppose just to echo the sentiment there that Karen said about the collaborative working. This has been going on for years and has been largely led by my colleague, Tandy Povall, who's taken a real lead in driving this project forward. I'm just the shop window, if you like, in terms of presenting this application. But there's an awful lot of work that's gone on by the council and notably by the land promoter, West of England Developments. So without all points of that triangle pulling together, this wouldn't have got to this stage. So it really has been a team effort between Network Rail, ourselves and the land promoter to get to this stage of a positive recommendation, with the prospect of reserve matters being submitted in a matter of months to get this thing moving. So keeping the project on track has been challenging, but the signals are good.
Okay, thank you for that, Simon. The next public speaker on my list is David Whiteway, please, from GWR. Again, if you come to the public speaking desk. And when you're sitting comfortably, if you push the right-hand button, the red light will come on and your 3 minutes begin when you start speaking, sir, and welcome to the committee.
Thank you. On behalf of GWR, I speak in support of this application, which is crucial in restoring Wellington's rail connection to the UK National Rail Network. It is important to note that a separate planning application will be submitted for the new railway station itself at a later date by Network Rail, and this application before the committee today is to provide the access road to the station as an essential precursor to its development. Without the creation of the access road, the new station cannot go ahead. Wellington Station has been campaigned for by residents and businesses and politicians for many, many years, and we are now very close to being able to deliver on that vision. The station itself is on track to be completed in 2026, following the government's Network North funding commitment to reopen both Wellington and Cullompton stations, subject to the final business case approval. Clearly, to be able to get to that final business case approval and draw down the finance from government, there will need to be an agreed access road to the station site. And critically, given the location of the new station, this development also provides transfer of the land required to deliver a station car park. Wellington Station is intended to be served by our services, providing onward connections around the GWR network. Somerset needs more rail stations, and this is a very real and very viable proposition. There is growing interest in public transport, with more people switching from private car to rail. Rail travel in the southwest has bounced back strongly since COVID, and is one of the few areas of the UK that has seen passenger numbers higher than in 2019. The success of reopening the Dartmoor line to Oakhampton, where we have seen use exceed expectation, underlines the expected demand we would see from reopening a station at Wellington, especially given the population is 3 times the size and the train services would call at more destinations. Reopening the station on the original site is not feasible. It would mean the forcible relocation of some of Wellington's major employers. And crucially, the track curvature at that location would not meet modern railway standards for platform accessibility and safe sighting from train drivers to be able to stop at the old station. A new site is therefore required, and we have worked with Somerset County Council and Network Rail to identify a site that allows connection to the main line. The only site that is feasible and is close enough to serve Wellington is the site off Ninehead Road. Providing sustainable travel in new growth areas is an ongoing challenge for developers and local authorities. This application gives Wellington and Somerset a fantastic opportunity to unlock major public infrastructure that reduces carbon emissions by the switch to rail and will help the local economy, putting Wellington firmly on the national rail network, with links to Exeter, Taunton and beyond for visitors and residents alike. We look forward to being able to serve Wellington and its wider communities as soon as possible and commend this first step of the access road that will enable the new station to be built.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteway. Simon, was there anything you wanted to come back on that? No. Okay, the next public speaker on my list is Jeremy Toy from the Ninehead Parish Council, please. Mr. Toy. Good afternoon and welcome to the committee. As previously mentioned, push the right-hand button, the red button comes on, and when you're ready to speak, your 3 minutes starts as you start speaking, sir.
Will you hear me? Right. Okay, my name's Jeremy Toy. I represent Ninehead Parish Council. Ninehead is a rural parish just to the north of the site that we're talking about today, just beyond the railway. So we are, in general, very positive about this development, particularly access to the railways when it comes. But also, I think the new supermarket's been approved by most of our residents, and also recognising the need for local housing. However, we are and have been very concerned about one aspect which we are concentrating on today, which is the access to the site. If you add up the 200 houses, the employment requirements, the railway station, parking and everything else, then one exit and entrance seems to be already a little short, but its position at the moment is dangerous. I can only give my own examples. Over the last few months, I've had 4 or 5 times when I've been indicating going from Wellington to Ninehead. My indicator operates, and if I don't turn it off, people think I'm going into Lidl and pull out in front of me. The other day, I happened not to turn off my indicator and a huge truck came out in front of me, causing me to stop. We all learn that as residents, but visitors and people who are coming from further afield might not be aware of that. I see now, to my pleasure, that there is an idea of going back to the original plan, or the pre-application plan, which was to have a T-junction which made the main road effectively going into the new development. Ninehead Road is already a very narrow road. Those of you who know it, it's single track in places, it floods. So it's not exactly a main road. So if that could be applied, that would be very good. But in the meantime, we have to live with that junction. any action that's taken on that, which brings it earlier or at the start of this development, would be appreciated. I am concerned with Mr. Fox's comment right at the end of his description of what was happening with the negotiations with the supermarket, which was that if those negotiations are not successful, things stay as they are. I think that is not acceptable, not just for the people of Ninehead, they're a small part of it, but to the people themselves who are trying to get out of that exit at 9 o'clock in the morning from 200 houses and another X number of cars trying to get in. So if that is the case, then an alternative to that supermarket approval should, well, perhaps could be considered. I know there are all sorts of issues, and I welcome the idea of the VATs being protected, but at the same time, we need to protect our people as well.
Mr. Toy, would you bring your remarks to a conclusion? So your 3 minutes are up.
Yes, okay. In sum, this committee to consider ways of improving vehicular access to the proposed site, including now to Lidl. Firstly, by repositioning the entrance in the way that's been proposed and making sure that actually happens. And secondly, by looking at ways in which people can have either alternative access or by using public transport in some way that might be just better than a bus every half hour or so. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Toy. Simon, is there anything you want to come back on?
Not. I think I've preempted the parish council representations in my presentation. Just to note in Appendix 1 under Highway Works is the suggested approach in the legal agreement to this matter. We can't mandate it because the developer doesn't own that land at present, but the indications are that Lidl are comfortable with us chiseling off their land. They feel it's a better arrangement, and you know, it'd be very helpful if the parish council wrote to Lidl directly to inform them that they back the council's approach to the continuous road, and that may well help them feel that there's local feedback to the issue that we have described to them. So either the developer will do it with that little land, or they will pass us monies and we will do it as part of our active travel scheme. But it is dependent on that land coming forward, and you know, you can never give any guarantees on this, but it looks favourable at this point in time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Toy. The next public speaker is Dave Farrow, who's, I believe you're online, is that right?
Yes, it is, Chair.
Good afternoon.
My name's thank you very much. My name is Dave Farrow and I'm the Town Clerk for Wellington Town Council. The Council considered the revised application at its meeting on the 8th of April, where it noted that some concerns previously identified had been addressed and reaffirmed its support for the development, noting a concern regarding viability reducing planning obligations, which I'll return to later. There are two elements to our support. Firstly, the key factor for the Town Council is that the development is necessary to facilitate the delivery of the railway station, as has already been stated. The railway station is an essential development for the town as it continues to grow. It will open up access to wider employment and education possibilities for our residents, enabling them to access a far wider range of opportunities. For example, at the moment, for post-16 education, opportunities for our young people are primarily limited to either Richard Hewish or Bridgewater and Taunton colleges in Taunton. Both are fine institutions, but having a station will open up Exeter, Tiverton, Bridgewater and Bristol, making them more accessible for further education provision, opening up a whole new set of easily accessible courses and opportunities. The station will also encourage businesses and visitors to the town through the improved connectivity it will provide, which will have a positive economic impact on the town. Secondly, the development itself. The development in general is felt to be well thought out and designed, although there were some concerns shared regarding the access to it, as has previously been outlined. The Council welcomes in particular the concept of the station square and the possibility this presents, and has indicated its willingness to lead on its development and take on its management once completed. It will provide a focal point for people using the station and act as an active travel hub with a cycle hub, information boards and so on. We're also pleased to see that it's proposed that the original Pyramidion from Wellington Monument, which has been in storage for a number of years following the restoration of the monument, will have pride of place in the square. I said I'd return to the issue around planning obligations having to be reduced to deliver the development in the station. Clearly, the Town Council's preference would have been that the usual planning obligations in relation to affordable housing and education contributions are applied. However, in this context, we understand the challenges facing planning officers to try to deliver what is an essential development for the future of the town in the context of the general economic picture and increasing costs. There are always balances to be struck between delivering the usual planning obligations and the needs of a development. On this occasion, the need is to deliver the land for the railway station and the station square alongside and within the development. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to deliver a railway station for the town and the supporting infrastructure. We'll probably not get this opportunity again. And so on this occasion, albeit regrettably, we recognise there has to be some flex in relation to the normal obligations. So in conclusion, and on the basis of what I've said today, Wellington Town Council recommends that this application be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Simon, was there anything you want to come back on Mr. Farrow's comments? Okay, thank you. The last public speaker on this is, before we move to the councillors, is Robin Upton, who's the agent. Mr. Upton, good afternoon and welcome. Sure you realise by now,
I know the drill.
3 minutes start when you start speaking, Mr. Upton.
Okay, thank you, Chair and members, for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicants, West of England Developments. Planning policy supports the mix of residential and commercial development proposed on this allocated site. Currently, there is a shortfall of 400 houses at this site compared to the 900 homes that were originally envisaged by the core strategy. This application for 200 dwellings in part makes up for that shortfall. After the Longforth Farm site was allocated, it became the preferred location for the new Wellington Rail Halt, or as we know it, a train station. The applicant has worked tirelessly with the council and Network Rail to ensure that the development provides a suitable access spine road and pedestrian and cycle links to and from the new station. As we've heard, a new square is proposed. The layout has been scrutinised by your officers and has gone through 2 design review panels, including the quality review panel, that have influenced the proposed master plan. There are no technical objections to the scheme. Highways are supporting the proposals. As we've heard, an alternative access arrangement can be provided, and the money in the 106 for that can be delivered as soon as possible. As soon as it becomes available, the applicant is willing to provide that access. A set of parameter plans are proposed that will shape the future reserve matters application, and we are committed to ensuring that the development achieves the design guidelines of the Wellington Place Plan. Crucially, should this outline application be approved, the applicant has agreed to submit an early application for the spine road through the site to ensure that the access is served, ensure that the station is served by the access as soon as possible. Ensuring that the development delivers the station has come at a considerable cost, over and above what would normally be required on a scheme such as this. And as stated in the officer's report, a viability assessment has been thorough and considered every aspect that has been required to do. In this case, however, the public benefit is a far greater cost that you wouldn't normally associate with a development like this, i.e. facilitating the train station. A £1 million phosphate credit bill hasn't helped either. The viability assessment has confirmed that the landowner and developer return on this development is as low as it gets, to the point where any other developer would not be interested in the development. West of England are a local company with a locally employed workforce and see the legacy benefit of delivering the station for the town, whereas other national developers wouldn't. To quote the conclusion of the officer's report, this application delivers far more than it doesn't. Chair and councillors, we hope that you will support the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Upton. Simon, is there anything you want to come back on? Okay, in the case, we're going to move on to the councillors. And the first councillor to catch my eye was Gwyl Wren, followed by Andy Sully, please, and then Andy Hadley.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, a couple of things I want to sort of pick up. The first one I think is probably the easier one, and that's the question of the access. I made reference to this in my earlier comments, and I was very pleased to see that the proposal to change the emphasis of the road into the development with the Nine Head Road leading off it had been made. I was therefore quite disturbed to hear that this was not a done deal and may not happen. And I think it does need to happen. I think it's very, very important. One thing that hasn't been picked up by anybody is if you use Google Maps to travel from the motorway to Milverton with Liscombe or up into Exmoor, it takes you up this road. It doesn't take you through Wellington, it takes you along this road. So it carries a significant amount of traffic, which has been of concern to the residents of Nine Head for many years. And so therefore not doing anything about this junction, I think would be very unwise. So I really hope that the council and the developers and Lidl can get together to sort this out. The second thing I want to talk about is the bats, of course, and looking at page 45 on the report, I see that Natural England's advice says that your authority will need to be satisfied that any planning approval will maintain the favourable conservation status of Barbastell bats. Well, certainly looking at the proposals here, listening to the comments of the bat group, I have to have serious doubts as to whether it will. Clearly, and particularly when the railway station is built to the north, they will be more or less hemmed in. And that does concern me considerably. I'm also not sure about where the bats, the bats just don't live in the tree all the time. They go off and they hunt. They talk about this is a maternity roost, so they may go off somewhere in the wintertime, I don't know. But I'm not convinced that they've got enough supporting habitat round that is available to them to maintain this roost as viable for them in the long run. So at the moment, I'm inclined on the bats alone to vote against, but I'm more than interested to hear what everybody else has got to say. Thank you.
Well, Andy Sullivan, Andy Hadley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Back in 2013, I was part of a campaign, Trains for Wellington. Back then, we thought that it would take maybe 5 or 6 years before we'd see a new train station. 11 years on, and it's nearly there. Obviously, this application before us today is not the planning application for the train station, which will be brought forward by obviously Network Rail, which we've been explained to us today. This application is, I would see it as an enabling application to help deliver the needed infrastructure, such as the road and the station square, and much needed local housing. In the officer's report, he describes the various asks for funding like a piece of cake. There's only so much cake to go around, and if we do not grant planning, then nobody will get any of the cake. And if you look at section 13.4 under the planning balances and conclusion, in his comments, he says the development delivers far more than it doesn't and is deliverable. Well, I think that's the key word, deliverable. If we don't do it, it's not going to happen. I'm therefore happy, Chairman, to propose that we grant planning permission, but I'm happy to listen to what other councillors have to say. Thank you.
I think first of all, I didn't declare this before, but I didn't really think about it. I am actually an employee of the supermarket that's been, not the actual site, but of the chain of supermarkets. But it is only a personal one. I have no dealings with that site at all. So yes, personal interest. Yeah. I see this has got 3 main elements to it: site access, the bats, and viability. Viability, I don't have so much of an issue with. I normally do have issues with viability, but on this, I think the public benefit of the railway station at the end of the day would more than outweigh any viability issues on this particular site. I don't normally say that. The bats, I'm not sure. There seems to be a fair bit of mitigation with the amount of land that is being set aside to allow them to forage. So I'm 50-50 on that one. The one that really worries me is the site access. I would like to see that become the main road rather than as a junction that's causing the problems. So I am wavering. I know the importance of this site. I know the importance of the site for the people of Wellington. But that site access is my main beef.
Okay, thank you. Next, Councillor Cashmire was Carol Ellis, followed by Haviv Barbahai, please. Carol.
Thank you. No, just simply to say, I think I'm with Andy on this. I think that the public benefits of the railway station and I love the ideas about the square and Wellington Town Council is going to be taking that on. There is so much good about this. I mean, you know, we could talk for hours and hours and hours about bats and about all sorts of things, the access and the site, but at the end of the day, there is you've got to look at the overwhelming benefits of the scheme as a whole, and they are so significant in terms of climate, active travel, getting people out of their cars, the significance for Wellington. It's just huge. So I think it's good enough for us to grant permission, and I think the benefits will be absolutely immense.
Okay, Councillor Barbahai.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think for Wellington to be more sustainable, it has to have a railway station. This application goes a long way to enable that. I therefore support the office's recommendation along with Wellington Town Council, Great Western Rail and Network Rail. I'm more encouraged about the £445 per unit given towards health provisions. As you know, Mr. Chairman, health provision along with environment are the two big issues that we have to address. And I think, you know, perhaps with future developments, medium to large scale developments, we ought to look at this, and where possible, we can actually have that sort of contribution in place. And if not, we could actually ask in future to have a land allocated for a medical hub that can actually see doctor surgeries, potentially dental surgeries, pharmacy, etc. But all in all, I'm in support of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Norman Campbell, please. Norman.
That way. There we are. Yes, quite some report. I think I've missed a bit of my beauty sleep as well. The access and the many issues that have addressed this site have been addressed as best they can be. And I can see the direction of travel to being a happy solution with the access because everybody wins. The bat side of it is something I can speak a bit more about, living as a near neighbour to Hesticombe. Quite frankly, yes, providing the extra trees is one way around, but if you pay great attention to lighting on your new development and make sure that it is very good, of the right type and down lighting, then you will see those bats. And I know that from sitting in my sitting room at home, when of a summer evening, we, you know, as it goes dark, we will see a plethora of bats flying about all over the place. And if I switch the wrong light on outside, they'll all disappear. So I think that it's as much important to make sure that you've got that lighting right in the new development, because the gardens will help bring more food, etc., for the bats as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I thought there was a queue.
Yeah, well, there is, but you're in front of it.
Oh, right. Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
yeah.
Well, I am supportive of this, generally for the reasons that have been outlined already. A couple of small queries, however. So far as the access is concerned, and I'm thinking in particular about access to the school. So we know that there will be access from the south at the point, potentially the bottom left-hand corner there. Yeah. So I totally get why access through the public open space can't be put in place in an official way because of the issues surrounding the bats. The town council has that land which is marked up as allotments. As a query, really, more than sort of a point. Is there any scope for, with the cooperation of the town council, at some point there being some kind of route, which means that people from this site could on foot or cycle get to the school to the west of the roundabout rather than being, you see what, yeah, you were there then. I think you probably see what I mean, can't you? Not quite there. You go across, go right on our screen, east. There. Is there a way of getting any scope for a route that gets people to there rather than having to go along the main road around the edge of the roundabout if the town council cooperate? I'm sure they would. Sorry.
In theory, yes. The issue has been, I mean, that land will be in the town council's control, and therefore, you know, what they seek to do with it is largely up to them. And there may be a margin beyond the allotment land that can be used. The reason why we haven't pursued a route is because I think, as I said during my presentation, the minute you start inviting the public, small children in your scenario, if it's dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you're walking home from primary school, that route needs to be lit. And I totally take Norman's point, but I think we felt, given the representations that had, that is a potential something for the future. It's not absolutely imperative for the success of this planning application today. And having you've obviously got lighting on the public highway. It will be widened and segregated with a cycle lane, so it will be a more comfortable walk than it is currently. But the primary school, that's their playing field, and the school is literally here. So it's a short walk. It's not as direct, but any sort of encouraging more of the public to go through here will bring public safety issues, lighting, and those sorts of things. And that's why we've sort of stayed clear of it. But that's not to say that in the future it couldn't be revisited, but it will have to be done with the VAT issue in mind. The field here is very much a sort of dog walking field, doing laps, somewhere just to go and escape a little bit. And that's why it's only got this single access point. We're not encouraging significant public use of this area, and so your idea has merit, but I think it may bring more issues than it solves.
And secondly, and I fully appreciate this is not the application for the railway station, but the railway station is kind of the elephant in the room in relation to this. Now, a lot of people don't know that I try and pretend to be a normal person, but my dark secret is a geeky interest in railways and trains. And I say this knowing that there's somebody from GWR and Network Rail listening in. Now, I'm as fully enthusiastic about station in Wellington, who wouldn't be? But my little concern is the lack of loop lines like we're in the original station, because people who are geeky like me will know that between Taunton and Exeter, that's one of those intensely used mainline two track sections in the West Country, and long distance trains which go quickly. Stopping trains get in their way. You've only got to get a cross-country train back and forth to Bristol all the time, like I do, to know what happens with those. And when you add in London trains as well, going by the Berks and Hants, it makes it even worse. Now, I think I'm resigned to the fact that this station is not going to have loop lines. And so when people clamour for more than hourly services, the operators are going to have the dilemma of saying, well, yes, it would be nice, but they'll get away with the fast trains. Is there any scope? Also, put it this way, if somebody were to look at this and think, oh yes, it would be lovely to fund loops so that stopping trains can stop in platform as well as fast trains pass them by, is the infrastructure around the square going to prevent that in any way? And does it matter, because is it in fact a dead duck as an idea anyway?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer about the operation of the railway. And I think fundamentally your point is right, that the railway station isn't part of this application, and to perpetuate a discussion about how the railway station operates may be taking us down a path. But I'm sure our Network Rail colleagues online and GWR would be more than happy to speak to you after this meeting.
I hope my comment about loop lines aren't prophetic, but I can see the man from GWR smiling at me.
Okay, Rosemary, followed by Stephen Pugsley, please, and then Paul.
I don't want to say too much about this, but what comes over to me about this, it's a shame we couldn't see the railway station at the same time? Because without the railway station, we're getting 200 odd houses. So, and the access, as has been said, from Exmoor and from the wider area is subject to the parish council saying it ought to be a T junction. I hope that isn't right. No, I want that to be right. It wants some T junction. It wants some more thought to the detail on that. But having said that, I wouldn't want to put the railway station in jeopardy. The greater good for another park and ride railway station seems to be good. Yeah.
Okay, the next councillor on my list is Stephen Buxley, please. Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think if I were to sum up the bulk of councillors' comments, it would be that the mitigations are sufficient and the advantages are substantial. And in the light of that, I'm happy to second the motion that Councillor Sully put forward to approve.
Thank you very much for that. Any other councillors? Sorry, Gwyl, yes, you wanted to come back. My apologies, Gwyl. I did write it down and then I ignored it.
Thank you. Just a question I meant to ask earlier. I was referring back to my notes. The protected bat area, who's going to be responsible for it?
So the woodland to the north, that is still to be decided. It may rest with the landowner. It is part of a conversation with Wellington Town Council, who have also resolved to take an interest in the ecology field. So it was a three-part recommendation that they made, which was to investigate the adoption of the green spaces within the development, adopt the green spaces that were also within the blue line. That includes the balance of the ecology field and presumably the woodland area, and also an area to the north, to the south of Lillibong Way, which is also within the residual landowners' ownership. So that was the resolution, and the detail of that needs to come through as part of the Section 106 agreement.
Okay, I can't see any other councillors wishing to speak on this. We've had the a proposer and a seconder, so I'm going to move to the vote as to whether we accept the officer's recommendations as per our sheet. So can I see those in favour, please? That's unanimous, I think. Oh, sorry, no, sorry. And is that an abstention or are you voting against, Gwyl? Voting against, thank you. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We're now going to move on to item 6 on our agenda. Right? Okay, I've been suggested we need a comfort break. I think it's probably a very good idea. 10 minutes, please, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to move on to item 6 on our agenda, which is application 14/21/0047, which is land east of the A38, south of Walford, across Monkton Heathfield, and Simon Fox is the presenting officer. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. So present this item as you've introduced. And as will be evident from my report, this is an update report to give members the up-to-date news on where we have got with this substantial planning application, Monkton Heathfield Phase 2 or Langalla Park. And this report is the third in the series of reports that have been brought to this committee to chart the progress from September 22, when the application was presented to members with a recommendation of refusal for 14 reasons. Since that time, obviously the applicant and the council have worked closely together on a basis of a planning performance agreement to drag this application to one that now looks significantly different to that was presented back in September 22. So to remind you, this is the red line site of Langala Park, bordered by the A38 at West Monkton. This was the master plan that comprised the recommendation back in 22. These were the reasons, which effectively was everything and anything you could think of. This was the on the left-hand side. This was the master plan that evolved in March 23, coined the tropical fish. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that was compared to the original master plan on the right. So Langala Park. This is the latest master plan, and this formed part of a substantial amendment that was submitted in January of this year. This moves the dial significantly in terms of those reasons for refusal that were put forward in September 22. We have a fundamental change to the local centre, the district centre, and the position of the through school. So through school, early years, primary and secondary, all on the same site. And obviously the inclusion of a substantial area of wetland to the east. Allotments to the south and a raft of other facilities within the district centre. Images within the submitted design and access statement illustrate the approach to the urban edge and also the approach to blue infrastructure, effectively the surface water drainage within the scheme. There are no dry, grassy attenuation basins shown on this scheme. So again, just to illustrate the ambition with the site, this is a perspective looking down on the A38, and in this bottom left-hand corner is the Monkton, the West Monkton Cricket Club roundabout. So this is looking up towards Monkton Elm Garden Centre in this direction and Langala in this direction. This shows the district centre, another square, but in this case, the district centre square, framing the community hall and school. And these are the sorts of ingredients that have effectively emerged through the discussion over the last period of time. This is then the other local centre at the other end of the site, and again shows the ambition in terms of placemaking that this application now proposes. So in summary of my recommendation, it's to seek further time to continue working towards a committee referral. Now, I've been here before, haven't I, Mr. Chairman? And the difference this time is we are now on the home straight. The application is, as I said, unrecognisable from that came before you in September 22, and that is because we have had the time to look at it properly and engage the plethora of policy that now exists in Taunton, partly through additional SPDs, guidance, the status of Taunton as a garden town, and the presence of neighbourhood plans in both Creech St Michael and the West Monkton neighbourhood plan areas that both extend over this site. That takes time to ensure that the requirements of the site are well understood and can be master planned. The master plan that I showed you is now 99% resolved in terms of what needs to be where and why it needs to be where it's shown. The issue now turns to, in a way familiar to my previous item, can we afford what we're now showing and asking for? And that in itself is a significant element of work that we're now tiptoeing into. There are challenges, of course, there will be, and I don't need to undertake a viability appraisal to maybe predict that that will be the case. However, the removal of the formerly proposed relief road will go some way to ensure that we can afford more than we would have been able to afford if that road was still part of the proposals. So We continue work on that. The applicant is starting to understand what that viability picture looks like. There are the implications of SIL. This is not a SIL exempt site, so a significant proportion of SIL is being asked for. And also there are substantial asks in terms of that through school site, some 8 hectares of land. The big issue that we're going to have to face here is the equalisation across other sites that would benefit from this site delivering a district centre, a through school and all the other infrastructure, whilst they maybe sit back and wait for all those things to be developed and then come in with their housing-led schemes. This is genuinely a community application. It includes all the elements that we'd want to see in an application as part of a Garn community in Taunton in 2024. And the extra time, the additional time, the necessary time that I'm asking for leading up to the autumn is to ensure that a robust viability appraisal exercise can be undertaken and that work can continue with West Monkton Parish Council and Creech St Michael Parish Council around those facilities, the affordability and deliverability of them, and also to ensure that matters such as stewardship are also well considered before I sit back in this hot seat and try and justify to you why you should be granting planning permission for it. So with that, Chair, I'll leave that as a recommendation and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I have 2 public speakers on this item, and the first is Mr. Stuart Haskins from West Monkton Parish Council. Mr. Haskins, good afternoon, welcome. If you come to the public speaking desk, get yourself comfortable, push the right hand button, the red light comes on, and your 3 minutes begin when you start speaking. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Haskins.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Simon, for the update. Before I do start, I would say that thank you for mentioning West Monkton Parish Council and Creech. We have been working very closely with Simon and the developer. And in general, we are very pleased with how things have progressed. However, and I think I'm pretty sure I speak on behalf of Creech St Michael, we are still very concerned about the proposals for the highways. I've got notes in front of me, but I'm going to shoot this from the hip, I'm afraid. Now I've heard what Simon has to say. We are very concerned about the highways. Monkton Heathfield 1 was delivered with a number of options for bus gates and various things. Eastern Relief Road around the development. Though the Eastern Relief Road was built, only one of the bus gates was put in on the A38. The result is we have huge numbers of traffic going through what was the A3259 through Monkton Heathfield. We are concerned that the proposals for the A38 as they stand today will further exaggerate that. I have to say that the developers have taken on board some of the proposals we put forward, which was to put traffic lights at the Monkton Elm Junction, but that's not going to answer the problem for Creech St Michael. Because of the restrictions that are being proposed to be put on the A38, we can see additional traffic going through our parishes, especially Creech St Michael. So to summarise, really, unless something is done about the A38 proposals within this development, we got a problem. The parish has put forward a proposal which was to have a major underpass for pedestrians to link the Monkton Heathfield 1 and the Monkton Heathfield 2 developments, so people could walk through. It could be landscaped. That idea was thrown out because it said it couldn't be afforded. I note comments that Simon's just made about the fact that viability is now better because they're not building an Eastern Relief Road around the outside of Monkton Heathfield 2, as it's called. But we have a real problem with active travel now. 6 crossing points are proposed. That's a push button crossing or something else to get from Monkton Heathfield 1 to Monkton Heathfield 2, to get to the school, to get to the district centre from Monkton Heathfield 1 and the existing parish. That's because the developers never built the shops and everything that they were supposed to build in Monkton Heathfield 1. So we're trying to build, we as a parish council are trying to build one community. And instead, what we've got is the A38 running right through the middle of it. When Monkton Heathfield 1 was planned, it was accepted busgate the existing A38, put a road around the outside, you could build a community. Now, we've got a main road, the artery from the east of the county, I know you're going to tell me, the east of the county, going right through the middle of this development. And we just cannot see how that is going to be safe for children crossing the road and to connectivity of the two parishes, two communities. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Haskins. Did you want to come back on any of that at this stage?
Well, the issues are technical, aren't they? Mr. Haskins has expressed the parish council view. This meeting isn't to decide whether there's a bus gate or not a bus gate, or an underpass or no underpass. This is an update to update members as to where the application currently stands. As is evident, highways, as always, is an issue still to be resolved, and therefore talks continue.
Yes, I think talks continuing is a very, very good thing. I think the timing of the end of those talks is the critical part, and getting an agreement at that point is a critical part. But we haven't heard from Mr. Jewson, the applicant, yet. So, Mr. Haskins, thank you for your time. And thank you for your contribution. Mr. Jewson, are you here, sir? When you're ready, Mr. Jewson, the microphone is on. So when you start speaking, your 3 minutes starts then. So thank you and welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair and members. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ian Jewson. I'm the agent for the application. Since I addressed this committee in October last year, as you've heard, things have moved on significantly. We had originally hoped to submit revisions to the proposal before Christmas, but due in part to delays in the release of the Somerset Phosphate budget calculator, we were unable to do so until January. The resubmission material includes a full suite of technical documents and an amended master plan, which incorporates changes to the district centre, the school site, highway design and green infrastructure. The submission in January was a culmination of many months of constructive talks with officers and stakeholders, including the Parish Council, and independent review by a quality review panel, all of which has been facilitated through a planned performance agreement. In my experience, this has not been your typical planning application process, but an example of how proactive working can coordinate resources effectively and strive for more positive outcomes. Like the other strategic sites allocated within the core strategy, this proposal is complex and requires very careful balancing of issues to ensure that the many needs and wants can be properly considered. The challenge has, of course, been made harder by the need to mitigate phosphate levels. It has not been easy, but the scheme has risen to this challenge by designing an on-site wetland mitigation scheme, avoiding the need to secure off-site credits. Whilst feedback from technical consultees has been positive, there is important work to do, as you've heard. In a few instances, we are still awaiting final responses from consultees such as Natural England. We and the case officer are chasing these, and as soon as these are received, we will consider any outstanding issues promptly, as we have done to date. I note Parish Councillor Haskins' concerns. We have discussed with the Parish Council these issues on many occasions, and we are very grateful for the continued engagement and can ensure them and everybody in this meeting that those considerations will continue to be on the table. We do, however, consider that the current design achieves a safe and sustainable approach to transport and travel whilst having the benefit of creating a high quality place, a view that is supported by Create Streets in their role as a design consultee for this application. I must stress that highway discussions are ongoing, as you've heard, and this will allow further dialogue and detailed highway matters to be considered. We now need time to define the Section 106 package in more detail, which of course would include highway related mitigation, so that the very best outcome can be brought to this committee for final consideration. Overall, very significant progress has been made, and I hope you will agree that the requirements of the previous resolution have been met. We are aware of the need for a prompt outcome, as this site has an important role to play in delivering homes, jobs and infrastructure. And I can assure you that the applicant also wants to see matters resolved as soon as possible. However, it is important that we have enough time to get things right. I therefore hope you can support the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time and your comments, Mr. Jewson. Simon, I'm going to reiterate at this point that this is an update report to the committee. and that the outcome that the officers are seeking, the recommendation that they're seeking, is that we agree to assist work with the applicant towards a committee date in the autumn of this year for this to come to a resolution. So I think it's fair to say that we have seen a lot of movement from both our major planning officer, Simon Fox, and the applicants, and that I believe sufficient progress has been made. However, I'm going to open it up to the councillors to speak. The first one to catch my eye was Stephen Pugsley, followed by Gore Wren, please. So, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. I think that as the recommendation at 1.2 says, it would be perverse to refuse now. And the sensible thing would be to do as the officer suggests, which is to postpone any further discussion about this now here until the autumn, and we look forward to being able to assess the application fully later on this year. So I would like to move the recommendation at 1.2 on page 328.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I don't have a problem with sort of extending it for another 6 months. I think that's very sensible. What did slightly trouble me, though, was something Mr. Haskins said in relation to failure to deliver facilities under previous applications, which were having a knock-on effect on this one. And I'd just like to know a little bit more about that from the planning officer's perspective. And is there anything we can do under existing permissions to help resolve that issue?
So I think particularly there's reference to some retail units that were proposed as part of phase one. They haven't been delivered for whatever reason, and the issue remains under review pending the outcome of this application as to whether formal enforcement action will be required. But clearly the allocation was predicated on a district centre. The amount of retail floor space and other facilities that this district centre is proposing will far outweigh the retail floor space that was proposed in MH1, and therefore we remain vigilant of the issue and will enforce if necessary.
I mean, I appreciate there are two halves to this development, 1 and 2. And the implication seems to be that the failure on 1 is going to, shall we say, throw number 2 slightly out of balance, not least because there is a main road dividing the 2. Now, if that is, I'm struggling to see how that is going to be accommodated, particularly if there are going to be viability issues with providing links between the 2, which are now going to be necessary because 1 hasn't delivered what it was supposed to do. Am I getting the right end of the stick?
I think the issue, Chair, is that this is an update report. You haven't seen my full and comprehensive report that deals with those issues, nor have you had the benefit of an extensive PowerPoint presentation showing you exactly how those issues are resolved. So you've heard one part of one side representation, you haven't heard the other. And to try and answer that question fully, we'd be here till Friday.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy with that. I will await the full report with bated breath when I'm suffering from insomnia. No, sorry. Thank you very much, Simon.
I'm not permitted to extend the committee meetings that far, I'm afraid. Well, okay. Any other councillors wish to speak on this? Andy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. It's just that I think that the agent needs to take on board Mr. Haskins' comments because about the connection. Otherwise, you can have yin and yang, and we don't want that. And obviously, active travel and connections between the two is key. So that's what I want to say. So I think the agent needs to take it on board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo what Councillor Sully had just said. On top of that, I think what I'd like to see is the public open spaces properly managed and looked after, because in the past I have seen some of these areas that have not been looked after properly. So can we have some sort of assurance that that area is actually seen to as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm keen to see what the final result is going to be on this, so I'm happy to second the proposition.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder now, so can I see those please in favour of the recommendation as printed? That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, moving on to item 7, we're going to let Simon leave the hot seat, and we're going to bring Sarah Stevens in. Sarah, are you? Yeah, we can ask Councillor Cavill to return. I know, it's an information only, but yeah, I think he feels it's safer. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we might be in business. So we're going to move now on to item 7 on the agenda, which is 49/20/0034, which is land to the north of Burgess Lane with Villiscombe. And the presenting officer is Sarah Stevens. So Sarah, good afternoon, welcome to the committee, and we look forward to the report.
Thank you, Chair. As you will see, I am not Russ Williams. Unfortunately, as I say, I'm going to have to cover this in the next application. Sadly, Russ left Somerset Council yesterday. So this is done at very short notice. So my apology as well, because my presentation is going to be probably not as detailed as Simon, as you've heard before. I haven't managed to find any tropical fish in any of the plans either. But you have before you a detailed report from the case officer. You also, in respect to this particular application, have quite a detailed update or amendment sheet before you. You should each have a copy of that. It includes amendments to some of the wordings of the conditions, including conditions 5 and 12, the plans. It includes updated consultation responses from Housing Enabling Team. And it also includes additional responses that were received. In one case from Councillor Mansell, which was received, but unfortunately was not included from the original report. So that is set out, as are a number of other points, including the case officer's responses to them. The application is for the approval as reserved matters. So the matters before you today are layout, appearance, scale and landscaping. The actual overall principle of the development has already been determined, and that is accompanied by a Section 106 agreement as well as conditions. But the Section 106 agreement includes matters of affordable housing and infrastructure. The proposal is for 71 dwellings, and this particular application has been delayed by phosphates, and there is now a solution phosphate mitigation as part of the proposal before you. And the layout broadly accords with the master plan that's previously been submitted and was dealt with as part of the outline application. And the application has been subject, this particular application has been subject to considerable discussions and amendments before it's been brought to you. The plan before you just shows the outline of the site. And again, a aerial photograph with the site outlined. This is from the original master plan in terms of the layout. This plan shows the hard landscaping that's proposed. And this one, the soft landscaping. The enclosure layout. The bin storage. And the parking layout. And one of the matters which I know has been a concern to some existing local residents is the matter of parking and the displacement of some on-road parking availability. And if you look at, just see my cursor going around here, the application that's before you today includes 14 additional spaces to accommodate existing residents from Burgess Road as part of the application site. And it's worth just pointing out that this provision is not a necessary requirement as far as the application is concerned. But the interest of good planning, and obviously the developer has actually proposed to include those parking spaces as part of the proposal to mitigate the issue of on-road parking in the vicinity of the site. Next plan is in relation to vehicle trafficking and movement. This one gives you some indication of the house types. And I'm afraid this presentation does include quite a few floor plans and elevations. But there is a variety of different house types, as you will see from the various cross sections and the street scenes that have been provided. And the development also includes a number of bungalows. In terms of phosphate mitigation, this is provided off-site, and the area which difficult to see on the line, but it's this area sort of around here. And again, just the phosphate mitigation area showing in terms of the sizes and the proposed sort of planting. Part of it's going to be orchard, some of it's a bit of woodland, and mixed, sort of mixed planting as well. And a number of photographs of the site. You can see the changes in land levels. So just in terms of really the key matters that were before you, the principle of the development has already been established. There is outline permission already granted for the proposal. So it's the matters of landscaping, layout, appearance and scale that you're looking at today. The officers are satisfied that the design scheme is in keeping with the earlier phases and the wider character of the area, and that a good mix of house types and layout is found to be acceptable. The impact on local existing residents and the area was a matter of debate, I understand, at the outline stage, and the officers feel that the developer is mitigating one of the particular issues that was raised, which is the loss of roadside parking with a new parking area. And it should be noted that this is not something that the council could actually require, but nevertheless has been put forward by the developer. Affordable housing is being provided. Indeed, it makes a provision of 36% of dwellings that are affordable housing. So it's actually over and above what the council would normally seek. There are still some concerns in relation to mix and position, but again, the Section 106 agreement that was part of the outline consent does require the actual details of that affordable housing to be submitted and approved subsequently. So the officers feel that is something good that can be done by some amendment to the proposal that's before you, without actually needing to do anything major to it. Again, there are a substantial number of conditions in relation to details in relating to the sods and ecology. Highway Authority has been looking at this, and it's felt that they are happy with the scheme in terms of the impact on highway safety. And in terms of a benefit of this scheme, it will provide a significant, as I say, contribution towards the 5-year land housing shortfall. So the officer's recommendation, having had regard to all of the matters that have been raised, is conditional approval subject to a Section 106 agreement securing off-site phosphate mitigation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We have 6 public speakers on this, and the first speaker on my list is Peter Berman, please. I believe you're online, so is that correct?
I'm online, thanks, sir, and I'll just be on camera.
When you're ready
Right.
and you start speaking, your 3 minutes start.
Okay, I'm speaking on behalf of the Wiveliscombe Civic Society and also a local resident who lives not far from Burgess Lane and uses it quite a bit. Remembering this application, let's comment on the officer's report just now. The outline application, we had some reservations about, but had agreed in principle. It conformed with the local plan. But there is a huge difference in layout between the outline application, the original, and the subsequent detailed ones. And that is that the outline application showed an estate road going into the development and not with every house having its own access along Burgess Lane. And that is a huge difference, which I don't think has been pointed out by the officer. And I did appreciate her position just having come into this role. Now, so what our concern is, we were quite happy with the layout as it was, but you have to these are individual accesses, and one of the future speakers will describe the importance of Burgess Lane in the local context, makes it completely different and much less acceptable. Now, in his report, the officer referred to an active frontage. Now, I don't know quite what an active frontage means, but I think, as I understand it, it's that the houses, as in parts of Taunton, don't turn their back on the road. You don't feel that you're looking at the back of an estate. Wiveliscombe is a small town. This is within 10 minutes easy walk of the town centre, and the nearest car parking on this side of the town isn't that brilliant anyway. So a lot of people will walk into the town centre. So you can have an active frontage with footpaths from the houses onto the Burgess Lane without having that sort of impact. It will still be there. People will come onto the lane, just as they do on many of the roads around. The access to the town is up a road called Golden Hill, which all has footpath frontage directly onto the road and no vehicle frontage. So I think it's a little difficult to argue that. It's very nice to provide the car parking for Burgess Lane and Wellington Terrace, which is the very far end of Burgess Lane, near the main road for B3188. The only thing is, it's a good way if you've got shopping or young children from about 100 meters, 150 meters. You've had parking outside your house until now. And as a civic society, we can just see tension between the people who've got their parking at the moment outside their house and people who will be and the houses with nice accesses straight onto the road and at their
Thank you.
house.
Mr. Vernon, would you be kind enough to bring your remarks to a close? So you've had
Yes.
a little over 3
So
minutes.
Can I just say, we didn't object to the outline application because it had a different layout, a totally different layout. And had it had this layout, the first thing we'd have suggested was you must widen Burgess Lane. It could have been done, but we didn't think it needed it because of the layout. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. The next public speaker is Trevor Gilbert, please.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Afternoon.
My name is Trevor Gilbert, Chairman of the Willermead Residents Association. As the Willermead Residents Association, we raised a material objection at outline on the grounds that it must not be considered as acceptable to allow further 71 dwellings to drain into an existing attenuation pond without any legal agreement to properly cover the maintenance of this asset. This objection was, however, ignored, as the Section 106 agreement formed at outline only required a proportional affordable housing, children play equipment, and a travel plan obligation. The first point to be clear on is the distinction between an outline application that has already been determined and the current reserved matters application for the phase 3 dwellings of 71 houses. The original application chose to submit this at outline to determine the fundamental principles of the development, including access, but with all other matters to be determined at reserved matters. Whilst outline applications are typically used to gain an understanding of whether the nature of the development is acceptable, the specific details known as reserved matters can be confirmed later, as in this case. We understand that reserved matters are often used to confirm the legal rights for the development. The development was subsequently approved, but on condition 10, secured at outline that the basic draining rights on those that benefit from its use, i.e. phase 3 residents, must be liable for the maintenance of their assets over its lifetime. We must contend that condition 10 cannot refer to any pre-existing management arrangements, as it requires somewhat entirely new, as in a Section 106, to bind in perpetuity all future owners and occupiers at phase 3 of their obligations. Therefore, condition 10 cannot be considered as having been fully discharged, and we raise this now as it affects the outcome of this reserved matters application. What should happen now at the reserve matters is a new Section 6 entered into. The attenuation pond was originally designed to accommodate the surface water for phase 1 and 2, a much smaller capacity, which has subsequently increased to accommodate the additional inflow for phase 3. This comes with it increased maintenance costs. It cannot be considered as reasonable or proportionate to leave all these costs of maintenance on a minority of Willermead residents, 52, that forms phase 1 and 2, and who critically are remote from the largest proportion of the surface water. This goes against drainage case laws, and we must contend this. I would therefore implore the committee to go against the recommendation to approve this application, as we have been ignored throughout this application, and instead to refuse this development proposal as it stands at this stage. The reason is it must be considered as contrary to Section 175 of the NPPF, as there are no maintenance arrangements in place for the phase 3 development now at reserve matters that ensure an acceptable standard of SUDS operation for its lifetime of the development. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. And the next individual on my list is Frodo Higginson, please. Good afternoon and welcome to the committee. When you are comfortable and start speaking, your 3 minutes will commence. I notice your microphone is switched off currently. Please start whenever you're ready. We're not hearing you at all, I'm afraid. We're still not getting anything here in the room. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the next speaker on my list and give you an opportunity to try and perhaps leave the meeting and come back in again. I'm not sure. I'm not the most technically minded when it comes to the new technological kit, but I think I'm going to move on and I'll come back to you, Frodo, in a few minutes' time. The next person on my list is the divisional member, which is Councillor Dave Ansell. Dave, please come to the microphone and welcome to the committee. And when you're ready, your time starts when you push the button and the red light comes on.
Okay, I'll try and fire away quickly. As has been said, this application has actually taken quite some years to come through the system. And I was going to mention that there's been quite a number of changes in the case officer dealing with it, only to find there's been yet another one today. And I will say that I am pleased that my comments have now been passed on to the committee and they weren't in the original report. So I hope, as you've seen, I submitted comments and objections on the 12th and the 24th of July 2020 and 4th of January this year after the latest revisions were made to the proposal. Now, there's big problems that still remain, and I'm going to reinforce some points of others. And it's really important to understand there's 3 interconnected phases to this development. It's always been 3, and they've got things where they connect with each other, including in the assets. And that's partly arisen because a new road was needed, to which they have all contributed, including phase 3, I understand. And that road is built. It's now there. Now, we've heard from Trevor from the Willowmead Residents Association, and their phases 1 and 2, they've been built. They're there. Now, those residents are having to pay into a management company to maintain the shared assets, the play area, open space, the SUDS with the attenuation pond. But it's only phases 1 and 2 who are having to pay. And this has come as a massive surprise to everyone involved. And the Section 106 was not up there. I had to ask for it to be published with this reserved matters. And when it was published, it was a big surprise to suddenly see that phase 3 were not having to pay for these shared assets. And phase 3 is the biggest. Phase 3 is 71 houses. Phases 1 and 2 are 52. So this phase is more than half, and they're not having to pay for the shared assets. And the Residents Association, Trevor hasn't, is not letting you know just how cross local people are about that. They're not at all too pleased. And I have to say that their view is that phase 3 has got no access to the attenuation pond. They're not even aware that they've got any rights to access it. And the phases 1 and 2 people are not minded to give it unless phase 3 are drawn into the management agreement. So there's that. Now, it may be said this is a dispute now between those people involved, but I have to say the council should never have allowed this situation to develop, and it's there now. Another consequence of not linking into the management company is that there is no one identified to manage and to maintain, the allotments and the public car parking spaces. So that's a problem. A big issue with the on-street car parking problem. I've given evidence of this. This is going to displace. Now, parking is a problem all over Wiveliscombe, everywhere. And there's real hotspots where it's bad. This is a hotspot. Bottom of Golden Hill, hundreds of years old, no car parking spaces there, but people with cars. What is now, and there's 24 cars parked along there, and there can be more. And we're only getting 14 spaces coming in. It's not enough. This is wrong.
Allocated time has run out.
Okay, I
Please bring
feel that
your
right.
comments to a conclusion.
I could say so much more, and I'll do it really quickly. There's a problem with the driveways onto Burgess Lane, access out onto Heathstock Hill. You need to look at that. That's not good. Electric vehicle charging is not being required. The developer should just be providing it these days, but at least the council should be requiring it, not just an advisory. That's really bad. I think you need more information, and we do need some design changes to this application. It's still got problems in it, and it's going to cause an awful lot of upset, and it's going to cause ongoing problems in this form. It needs to be improved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Fodo, can I ask you to turn your microphone on, and can we see if we can hear you now? No, I'm afraid we still can't hear you. I have no idea how we resolve this.
Mr. Chairman, if it could help, Ms. Higginson sent me the statement she was going to make on behalf of the town council, which I thought was going to come before my contribution, which I could read out to you if you can't get her at all.
Let's see if we can get Fodo online first.
I will do that.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, excellent. Right. When you
Fabulous.
are comfortable and ready, you may begin.
Okay, apologies for all of that. I have no idea why that didn't work. Okay, I'm speaking as chair of Wiveliscombe Town Council Planning Group. And as you'll be aware, we raised a number of objections to the plan, focused solely on the impact from the out-facing design, which gives way to a multiple number of driveways directly onto Burgess Lane and Luxton Way. So a couple of Burgess Lane is the main access route for residents in the north of town, the primary school, Langley, and all the villages beyond, backwards in and out to Taunton or Watchet and Minehead. And the only other route is via the town centre, which is always congested. So this is a significant route in and out of town, not just a side road. And we just want to make clear that the layout is significantly different to the 2017 outline application, which others have said was an inward facing scheme. And that's why we want highways to still be considered. It's not enough to say that it's landscape and layout. It's a highways issue that should have been determined at outline stage. So we went from 3 vehicular accesses to now 18 additional driveways directly onto the road, 16 of which have back-to-back parking for 2 or 3 vehicles right adjacent to their property. So now with some amendments offer on, but it's so tight that it's unlikely to be used. It almost needs to cross the other driveway. The tracking plan came through very quickly. There'll need to be a lot of manoeuvring, and ultimately people will reverse it in or out of those driveways. And if the car that's blocked in needs access, then it's going to be a nightmare. We welcome the 14 parking spaces, but they are now over 100 metres away on the far side of the road to the residents of Burgess Lane who use on-road parking. And these spaces weren't offered as part of this outward design, just to be clear, but they were offered early on in the outline plan. And it doesn't address any of the parking issues, as Dave Mansell said, for other residents. And interestingly, it's worth noting that only 2 of the 19 affordable homes have parking adjacent. And the National Planning Policy says applications for development should minimise conflicts between pedestrians, cyclists and vehicles. Clearly, this scheme will cause conflict. Offering new residents these perfect solutions to parking whilst removing them from existing residents isn't a way to create a welcoming and harmonious community. And NPPF also talks about guarding against the unnecessary loss of valued facilities. Well, on-street parking is a valued facility in this location. We support this outward-facing active street scene, but we know there are better layouts. And we've tried to discuss this with the developer and fallen on fairly deaf ears. Likewise, we've never met the planning officer. The planning officer has not reached out to us at all. And so we urge you, as it stands, and secure one that actually acknowledges existing residents' needs.
Can I ask you to bring the points to a close?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
I'll sign out of the phone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, the last speakers on my list are Brett Spiller and Tony Brown, who are the agents and the applicant, and they're going to be jointly speaking for 3 minutes, apparently. So, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. To speed things up, Mr. Brown is in the audience, but I shall make the deputation on behalf of the applicant. But I'll keep this short because you have a very comprehensive officer report before you, and I've also, prior to the meeting, circulated some information. So I'll try and address some of the comments that you've just heard. I would stress that the application before you is for the approval of reserved matters, as the officer presenting has already established. Outline consent is in place for 71 dwellings, 25% of which are affordable, and new allotments as well. So the principle of that has already been agreed. And as has been mentioned, the issues around affordable housing delivery are tied up in the Section 106 agreement, and there are further obligations to discharge there. The application's had a lengthy gestation, and again, as the officers alluded to, nutrient neutrality mitigation is now in place. During the formative stages of the application, and indeed through the course of the application, the applicant has met with the Town Council on numerous occasions. I think that's been acknowledged. I can give a list of the number of meeting dates, which are quite substantial, and we have listened very carefully to the concerns that have been raised, and that has been dealt with through some of the amendments that have been tabled. To give you an example of that, further work has been done in respect to those driveways. It has been demonstrated that from a technical transport perspective, there is adequate turning and manoeuvring space to make sure that they can all be accessed in a forward gear. And again, people can exit safely in a forward gear as well. In terms of what we've tried to do through the active frontages, and I do appreciate there's various different interpretations of what that means, but we have tried to make sure that they positively face onto the street, giving a much more welcoming sense of arrival. Also for the incorporation of the driveways, I think it was a point that's been made to us on several occasions by the town council. As a main through route, they were concerned about traffic speeds. Now, one of the benefits of having private driveways onto that space is it does act as a natural traffic calming measure. People do slow down as they can see that driveways are positioned throughout that road. And again, there is no question in terms of highway safety from your transport officers. I'll move on quickly to the issue of the attenuation pond. As been rightly pointed out, that is a matter that is covered by conditions. It's also important, and you've heard a little bit about this, that this is the third phase of a much larger development. And I point out that this particular aspect of the scheme has contributed towards the road. It also contributes in the form of an allotment. So there is equalisation between the different phases in terms of some of the assets that will be provided, with earlier phases providing an attenuation lagoon that has capacity to meet the requirements of phase 3. Similarly with the play spaces being front loaded through earlier phases as well. But this particular phase has contributed in the form of allotments and also towards the cost of the road as well. I would also emphasise that there's no objection from the local lead flood authority, so there is no technical objection there, and that we are confident that that can be delivered. In terms of next steps, we are working with a registered provider to see whether we can provide an enhanced level, so above policy compliant levels of affordable housing. And for the reasons that I've outlined, I would commend the officer's recommendation to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spiller. Okay, councillors, the first councillor is your turn now. The first councillor to catch fire was Squirrel Run.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can we have a look at the layout again, please? That's it, yeah. That's fine, thank you. I mean, I think I have to say, when I saw that, once I was reading the report over the weekend, I did have a look at the site and the latest plans, because clearly these have caused a lot of concern. And I have to say, I was astonished to see so many houses opening up onto a road, particularly the road to Ford to the north where the purple houses are. And also, interestingly enough, if you look at Burgess Lane, if you come down from the purple houses and you sort of move right to left and around the corner, then the houses at the bottom are fronting, the drives are fronting onto the road, but the further up they're down, they're not. And I wonder why that was. And I could only assume that they're trying to shoehorn as much in as they can. And I have to say that having all those extra entrances onto a site that's got outline permission with access included seems a bit strange, because as has been said, we've added about 18 extra access points to this particular development. I appreciate that this placement of parked cars is not necessarily an objectionable matter, but nevertheless, I think that developers do need to work with the communities that they're joining, shall we say, and this seems to be a particularly tin-eared approach to making friends and influencing people. I think that's basically all I wanted to say. I wasn't quite sure whether the road was going to stay at the same width, or whether the development had been set back a little bit to allow for a slightly wider road, because if you go on Google Street View, parked cars there at a moment take up half the road. So it's in its own, even if you remove the parked cars, it's not a very wide road to come in and out of at the moment. I think the reporting officer referred to 36% of affordable housing. Actually, the update report says it's come down to 25%. So I think that's right. And there was also a sort of a plea about the 5-year housing supply. But this is already baked into it, isn't it? It's got an outline permission. So I don't think it's not an addition to what we've got. It's already there. All we're discussing is trying to get the development right and layout right. So I wasn't entirely sure that this would compromise our 5-year supply, but I'd welcome any comments on that. And finally, again, looking at Street View, I see that on Burgess Lane, the curbs have got holes in to facilitate highway drainage. And I just want to be assured that the works taking place behind them will not compromise that highway drainage and cause road flooding. Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, is there anything you'd like to come back on?
Sarah, I must apologise to pitching all that at you, because you've obviously just picked it up at very short notice. So I understand if the well, I'll understand anything you reply.
I think much of the concern, I think, that's been raised by both yourself, councillor, and also one of the other speakers in terms of the changes in layout. Clearly the layouts that was part of the outline application would have been an indicative one. You've now got the proposed one in front of you. The Highway Authority will obviously have been consulted in respect of the application, which would have included the increase in the number of access ways. My highway colleague is actually here, and I don't know whether or not you might wish to make a comment. I would be grateful if you do, because you probably have greater.
Well, welcome to the committee, John.
Thank you, Chair. As I say, hello, John Fellingham, Service Manager for Highways Development Management at the Council, helping out Sarah today. Like Sarah, I've been very much thrown into the deep end on this one, so I will try and answer his questions the best I can. So please don't hold me to it if I can't give you full and sustained answers. Councillor Wren, in answer to your questions and some of the items that have been raised by the local members, obviously, as has been pointed out, this was an outline application from 2017. We're now looking at reserve matters in 2024. Obviously, things and design standards have moved on subsequently between those time periods. Previously in 2017, yes, kind of in terms of this road design necessarily wouldn't have looked to sustain an active frontage, because the principal purpose of the road would have been set to do exactly what it was, a road A to B link. However, times do change, and design ethos and design understanding and guidance does change, and the government's move through Manual for Streets and other guidance documents do look towards having an active frontage to properties along roads of these natures. This is one of a number of schemes that as an authority generally that we deal with, and we have to balance that form and function of what the road is there to do as part of that process. And in all developments, we do look to have an element of active frontage along those areas to allow for access onto those roads. As I say, forgive me, because obviously, like yourselves, I'm trying to work through this and answer your questions the best I can. But obviously, that would be something that we have looked at as part of the application, as part of the officers would have looked at through the process. Reviewing Mr. Russell's report extensively whilst Sarah was doing the presentation, some of the other aspects as well, it clearly sees that the Highway Authority have gone through at least 3 iterations of comments back and forth with the agent in relation to this scheme. And reading the last final comments, I believe that there's obviously some elements that would need to be picked up through, not necessarily at this stage, but as part of, if you were minded to grant it, through the kind of adoption section 38 process as well. But generally, and to answer the questions, yes, I appreciate the concerns over active frontage. However, as I say, design and guidance has changed to allow for that kind of aspect to be brought forward.
Well, you may come back, of course.
Thank you very much. That's very, very helpful. But I do note the word guidance. So thank you.
Can I just come back on the terminology of guidance, Chair? Guidance is obviously there to assist. It's not meant to be binding, but it's meant to be there to assist us in kind of doing the betterment that we can for all development. So it allows us flexibility, but obviously it urges us to take those on board to improve better placemaking, so it doesn't become a highways dominated environment. And as you members know, the authority is trying to move more towards a placemaking environment as an authority in general. And obviously having active frontage does allow for that, so the road is not becoming a dominant factor of the development.
Yeah, I think the problem is that the road is already, a fairly well-used access into back backways access into Wiveliscombe. So the road is the road, and trying to turn it into a different type of place, I think, has given us the kind of problems that have been articulated today. But thank you very much for your response, much appreciated. There are a couple of other points. There was clarifying the affordable housing, which I think, as I say, is in here. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to bring Martin Evans, our lawyer, in at this stage.
It's just to say, in terms of the affordable housing, on the 4th and 5th pages of your update, at the bottom, just before the table on page 5, it explains that there'll be 26 affordable dwellings, 18 as required by the Section 106 agreement, plus 8 additional units. And that brings the total provision to 36%. And then the table breaks that down. And just in relation to the question of the 5-year housing land supply, you're right, Councillor Wren, but the deliverability of a site is also relevant in those calculations. And one of those markers is whether the site's got reserved matters approval as to whether it's deliverable or not.
At the top of the 3rd page of our supplementary report, the last sentence in the first paragraph says it is noted, this is from Housing Enabling, it is noted this is now reduced back to 25% affordable homes. That's the point I looked at. Is there a contradiction here?
I think the later comment is the officer comment, which is a later comment, I believe. Is that correct, Sarah?
I think I've just been, yes, it's 25%. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points I want to pick up about the shared assets. The comment was made that it's not going to be part of the management company. It was set up before. That's going to manage, I think, two previous developments, which form the whole part of the whole site. So who's going to be paying for the, if we call the maintenance of this site going in the future? And about the parking, obviously, it's welcome that there's 14 extra parking spaces on this development, but will it be a free-for-all in the sense that if it's been put in to help alleviate parking in this area, but we all know that people have more than 2 or 3 cars per house, so will it be that this new development, they'll just bag all the parking spaces, or is it going to be allocated in some way to these people that live along Burgess Street? Thank you.
I think in terms of the parking, the extra parking, if I can call it like that, for the existing residents, that was going to be reserved. In terms of any additional control, that really is not a matter for this authority. Whether it's allocated one property or whatever, I think that would be a matter for the developers to deal with rather than us.
Derek?
Yeah.
So I had the other part, first part of the question. So the shed management, it was stressed that nobody was going to be paying for it. So who will pay for it? That's my question, because they're not going to be contributing into a shed management scheme for the update of the site.
Are you talking about it in respect of the parking, or the?
Not the parking. No, they said the speaker said about originally the two previous parts of the site are part of a management company that keeps obviously the green spaces up and running. They pay obviously a monthly charge or quarterly charge, or whatever. They're saying this part of the site is not going to be tied into that. So who's going to pay for the upkeep of the green spaces and stuff?
I think from what the developer, Mr. Spiller, actually was saying, that the early parts have paid for some of the sort of infrastructure and areas that need to be maintained, and the later part of this part of the development is going to be paying for separate items. So between all of the bits, then everything will be paid for. But they won't all be paying for everything. Yep.
I believe it. This is clear now. That so we've got three phases: phases 1 and 2. Phases 1 and 2 have been the residents there pay into the management company, and they've been asked to start doing that. And this was required by the Section 106 agreement. That happened for phase 1 and 2. They thought the same thing would happen with phase 3. And they were absolutely astounded when the Section 106 came out for phase 3, and there was no mirror arrangement for phase 3 residents to contribute to the management company for the whole development. It's just not there. And we've been raising this through our comments to the officers. I've even had a separate correspondence with one of the previous case officers, Jeremy Guys, when he was here about this. And people who understand we're not happy about this. So the assets phase 1 and 2 are having to pay for are the lion's share of it. So the shared play space, the open space, the big public open space, and importantly for the attenuation pond as well, which has been sized for all of the phases to feed into. And phase 3 is the biggest, and they're not having to pay at all in for that attenuation. They're not linked. So
hang on. Oh, hold on. We're not going to enter a complete discussion. David, thank you for your comments and thank you for the assistance. I will ask for some clarification, but we are going to move on. But before we do anything else, I'm going to bring the planning committee's lawyer in at this stage. But thank you.
May I just mention one thing, please, which I haven't yet said?
Make it very brief, please.
The allotments and the public parking spaces are part of this phase. If you look through the documents, there is no one responsible for the management and maintenance of those. No one has been identified. If they'd been put in with the management company, it would have been sorted.
Thank
you. Not.
No. If you wait a moment, I've just indicated I'm going to bring the planning lawyer in at this point. I will then come to you, but we are not going to enter a free-for-all. Okay, so.
Yes, Chair, it's just on the question of who pays for the management of the infrastructure, and that is dealt with in your update report. Officer comment, sorry, the pages aren't numbered, so it's the penultimate page of your update report. Yeah. Officer comment, third of the way down, who pays for infrastructure on the site is not a material consideration. The applicant has the legal right to connect into and use infrastructure, including SUDs on earlier phases. This is a civil legal matter that was dealt with following the sale of the various phases, and existing residents will have been aware of what they were paying management fees towards. This is the officer comment. This is not a point which an objection can be raised. And just from a legal perspective, from what I have read and understood, I concur with that officer comment.
Thank you, Martin. Derek.
If we're concluded on that point, so back to the driveways, parking, etc. So in principle, the whole idea of having them front on to the road and making them more connected to the community, totally get that. Government guidance or no government guidance, to me, that seems better in terms of community integration. I'm just a little bit concerned, maybe something for Mr. Fillingham to come in on. So in 2017, the idea was that they back onto the road, at which point highways didn't have any safety concerns. Between now and then, government guidance kind of promotes flipping them round front onto the road, which I'm saying I like. Can I just be reassured, though, that we haven't got a situation where in that intervening period, somehow sight has been lost of the fact that this is a road, which I'm looking at it on Google Street View now, which is clearly narrow. It's clearly got lots of cars parked on it. I mean, I don't know if we can get that up on the screen. I'm just looking at it and thinking, well, much as I like the idea of the driveways onto it, isn't there an obvious safety concern? Nobody's suggesting, are they, that there's going to be double yellow lines on the opposite side to prevent parking on Burgess Lane? So can't stop this parking that I'm looking at right now. People, some parked entirely in the carriageway and blocking nearly half the road, others parked on the pavement. I mean, it just seems to me there's an elephant in the room here, which is that this road is not really set up for lots of cars coming in and out of driveways on it. And much as I like that idea, I just want some reassurance that somehow that apparently obvious point hasn't got lost in the mix because of the way that highways responded in 2017 and are now dealing with it now.
Thanks. Nice, easy question there. Thanks for that. That's great. But look, joking aside, in all seriousness, the design of the road would have gone through itself when the road was first put in, and sadly to say, I was knocking around this at the county council at the time when that application for that road did come through. The road itself is a standard width. It has a white line along it. It can allow free flow of passing along it. Now, yes, there are cars on the Google imagery that shows that vehicles are parking on the highway. Whether we agree with that or not, that does occur. They technically should not legally, but they do, and that's a matter of fact. And I'm not going to sit here and argue for that because of the obviously time, and we all want to go home at some point. The general consensus is that obviously we have gone through this, and the technical expertise of the Highway Authority have reviewed the application. They considered it to be appropriate. So they are of the opinion that the scheme as it stands is acceptable. We, as I say, and it said previously, we've gone through a number of iterations of the scheme. I believe looking at Mr. Russell's report is, I think we're on to our third iteration of comments by the end of it, going into the report. So we've gone through and done everything that we can and commented on we can. The officers, my officers, would have, if they felt that there was a highway safety concern related to those, they would have raised that as part of the report, and the recommendation from the Highway Authority would have been certainly different. So I can take it as read from what the officers have said that we are satisfied with what is there.
This is a really difficult one, Mr. Chairman. I know. I mean, it's clearly a major development for a community of the size of Wiveliscombe, and we have to treat this application with considerable care. I do have to say, and I feel very strongly for Officer Stevens under the circumstances, that we are slightly hamstrung that the officer who prepared the report and knows this so well is not here, and therefore can leap in straight away and respond to some of the concerns which are perfectly rightly being raised. However, reading the report and reading the committee amendment sheet, all of which I'm assuming Mr. Williams had a considerable hand in preparing, the officer who knew it best, it seems that the planning reasons to resist this are not there. So however much concern we've got, I'm not hearing that that actually translates into proper planning reasons for doing anything other than accepting the officer recommendation at this point. I'm very happy if some other member can say, well, actually, I think you've overlooked this and there are these planning reasons. I don't hear them and I don't actually see them at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think in light of what we've heard from residents and councillors, I wish to recommend a deferral of this application till management of, especially phase 3, is with SUDs and public open spaces allotments in car parking is clarified. I think, as my colleague Councillor Pogson said, this is a difficult one, and I think what we need to do is to sort of make sure that we take our residents along with us, and that's what I'm proposing, a deferral till more information is coming forward, especially in light of SUDs, POS, allotments, etc. Thank you.
Okay, is there a second look at that suggestion?
Yes.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, so on this question, deferral, do either of you want to speak to that again? Do you want to speak to that again, Carol? Or should we just go to the vote? Well,
I think this needs to be deferred, not least because the preparing officer is not present, and I think it's not at all fair on the presenting officer present to be. I was going to use the word lumbered. I think lumbered is probably the right word with this application. I think if we, and I've never been a great fan of deferments, I must say. I think if it was deferred, I would like the 106 to be looked at again, because there are clearly some omissions in it, but I don't know whether that is a possibility or not, whether it's been signed. Because I think that, I mean, clearly there are some things missing from the 106 that perhaps need to be reconsidered in terms of how the attenuation pond is managed, the open spaces, particularly how these extra parking spaces can be protected, because I think we all know that if there's a spare space, somebody's going to stick their car in it. And if they are supposed to be designated for the people who've been displaced from the road opposite, then I think there needs to be some kind of protection in place. And if that's missing, I think that is a major omission. I also take the point that there, on the face of it, no obvious planning reasons for refusal. I can't help thinking, notwithstanding that this is not a good application generally.
Don't you bring the planning lawyer in at this point? Cool.
Only just to say, Chair, in terms of the section 106 points you've raised, Councillor, about the management of the SUDs and POS, I think that does fall within Councillor Farberhigh's proposal, and that would form part of if it is deferred to
yeah, I mean, because clearly the applicant isn't going to be very happy by a delayed decision, so I think we need to be quite clear as to what and why we're asking for.
Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was actually going to bring up a different point, but I think it's pertinent to this as well, and that's about the affordable housing, the types and where they are. There seems to be some contradiction in some of the notes as to
25%. Just been.
No, I'm not on about the numbers. Not on about the numbers.
Oh.
There's the statements here saying that the affordable housing is grouped where it should be pepper potted, and where most of the affordable housing is brick, where the rest of the houses are rendered, which actually makes them quite identifiable of what they are, which they shouldn't be doing. It says in the housing enabling on the actual report that this is contrary to the guides provided in the supplementary document, and yet in the actual notes it says that the matters were agreed between the house enabling team and the applicant. So it just seems a little bit of a mix-up to me as to what's been agreed. I would just like that issue looked at again if you go to defer it, to make sure that we get the right mix in the right place.
That would be an additional item. Personally speaking, I've also read through this, and I have to say I'm not entirely clear, as was obvious earlier. So whether Councillor Farberhigh and Councillor Ellis, you're willing to include clarification on affordable housing within your proposal. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillors, are you both prepared for that? Yeah. Okay. Okay, we've got a proposal on the table that has been proposed and seconded that we defer this application. I would want this application to come back at the earliest opportunity. Would be the only comment I'll make on that. So on that item to defer, can I see those in favour, please? Okay, that item is deferred. Okay, so we're going to move on now to item 8, which is 3/37/23/001. Okay, we're going to move on to item 8 on our agenda, which is 3/37/23/001, which is land to the south of Doniford Road and Normandy Avenue, Watchet. And again, it's Sarah Stevens who's drawn the short straw and is presenting in the absence of the original officer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm afraid I'm going to be covering this one as well, having picked this up at extremely short notice yesterday. So I will do my best to answer any detailed questions. Again, this is a reserve matter application. The access to the site has already been agreed, but the internal accesses and then the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale of up to 139 dwellings and associated works on the site. The application again has been subject to a considerable number of amendments as it's been through the assessment. It's also been to the quality review panel as well as part of that process. And the report, again, quite a detailed one, I think, in front of you, sets out not only the comments to the original application, but also the subsequent ones that you have that have been made. In terms of the, as I say, the development, I suppose the key points here, the access from the public highway has been approved. And again, the layout broadly accords with the master plan approach from the outlined stage. And it involves a primary spine road with cul-de-sacs, courtyards and a circular loop and connectivity to the wider town. There's a variety of house types. There's parkland provided for play space, walking areas and a community style orchard. And the SODS is integrated throughout the development. Here you see the site outlined in red. The area outlined in blue is a retained ecological area, but it is the site you're looking at today is outlined in the red. Again, you can see it hopefully on that plan. Let's try and get it. So this area here, the red line is not that clear on the screen. Again, this is the master plan. And again, broadly, there's three areas. So there's one area here, another one here, and the sort of top one here. Again, a general layout plan. This bit being the top part of the site. In terms of story heights, the pink is 1 story and the blue is 2 story, and the grey-green colour is 2.5 stories. Affordable housing marked on this particular plan. And the parking layout is shown on that one. And that's the enclosure of the various plots. Appears to have a duplicate there. The landscaping plan, again, this is to the sort of top left-hand part of the site. Quite a large area. And the bottom half of the site. and an overall concept planting area, quite large areas of planting. Some of the details of the play area. And again, I'll run through these quite quickly given the time, but a number of different house types. So the floor plans and the elevations of the different talks, but it's the range of different types. And these are the bungalows. And there's a couple of sort of artistic impressions of parts of the proposal, this being the central square. And then a number of photographs of the site. So a final slide, really the key considerations. Officers feel it's a detailed design proposed in a high quality providing a high quality residential development. It follows revisions and the design review recommendations in terms of scale, layout, appearance, which are now considered to be acceptable. The impact on the overall landscape and area and the landscaping design again is considered acceptable. Parking and the layout, including the movement through the site, again is considered by officers to be acceptable, as are the impacts on drainage and flood risk. It provides suitable affordable housing, no impact on heritage assets, and there are a number of conditions that were imposed through the outline consent as well that require some matters to be submitted and further assessed. And the recommendation is for conditional approval subject to the conditions that are set out in your agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I have three public speakers on this. The first is Mr. Alan Dyer. Are you in the room, sir? Excellent. Thank you. I'm sure you've worked out how it all works now. If you get yourself comfortable, sir. You push the right-hand button, the red light comes on, and when you're ready, your 3 minutes start. The button in front of you. Okay, no, the button is the button there, the right-hand button, and the red light comes on. That's it. When you're ready and comfortable, your 3 minutes start.
I'm a resident of Willerton, and I note that the primary entrance and exit to the proposed estate is a junction with Doniford Road. The road from Willerton to Doniford, this road, has a number of dangers. It is narrow, some of it is single track, it has no pavement. A large part of it has no verge, with hedges immediately adjacent to the road. Bends in the road hinder visibility. Water runs down the side of the road and across the road in places, especially in the winter. This at times pushes pedestrians and cyclists using it out towards the centre, especially in the winter when ice adds an additional danger. The road is used by pedestrians and cyclists travelling between Watchet, Doniford, what we call the married quarters, and Willerton. Pupils, some accompanied by parents, some without, use the road to cycle and walk to school. It's not unusual to see parents pushing a pram accompanied by children. I've feared for some time that the road will be the site of a serious accident. To my fears have been added the additional factors of cars from 139 new houses proposed, not to mention the additional pedestrians involved, some of whom may be walking to school. In an age of choice, parents on this day may choose Willerton schools. Doniford Road needs a footpath and cycle path along its length. A good start was made with the Alameda estate up the road, when a footpath was created adjacent to the estate alongside the road. A chance was missed to continue this path alongside the newer Orchard Brook estate further down the road, which has been completed. My suggestion for this new estate is that it would include at least a footpath and a cycleway alongside the Doniford Road where the development meets the Doniford Road. This could be extended in the future. Once this is established, it could be the incentive for the council to link this with the existing footpath at the top of the road outside Alameda. We should be aware of the benefits both to the environment and to the health of our community when people can choose to walk or cycle as an alternative to driving, and to walk and cycle in a safe way. We need some vision. We don't need a serious action to make us think. A simple improvements in the road that would help secure safe access will contribute to the long-term success of this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dye. The next public speaker is Chris Mitchell, please. Chris. Good afternoon. Welcome to the committee. Again, when you're comfortable, the light is on. So when you're comfortable, you start speaking, your 3 minutes begin.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Yes, thank you for allowing me to say a few words in relation to this application. I'm Christopher Mitchell. I live at Cherry Tree Way, which is adjacent to the site. I've noted extensive discussions about the appropriateness of the design for the location, resulting in significant changes to the overall design of the scheme. I think some of the changes make the scheme better and some don't. I've looked at the website of the applicant and they have built some good housing schemes in the past, well designed, innovative, but I'm not sure that this is going to be one of those schemes. However, I'm not going to comment any more about design. I want to point my comments towards two things. Firstly, definition of the site, and secondly, the appropriateness of the applicants to carry out the scheme in a way you as councillors should find acceptable. So on one, I've mentioned a number of times in correspondence that the red outline does not match the ownership. This breaches the planning legislation and should mean the application is invalid and should not be determined until this error is corrected. This is either a mistake, in which case I'm sure the applicant would want to correct the error, or it is a deliberate attempt to adversely affect the outcome for local people. Either way, this matter should be addressed before the application is determined. On the second point, you need to decide if the applications are trustworthy. And if you do not feel they are, you should not issue planning approval. This is what the planning legislation tells you to do. So if they are deliberately misrepresenting the boundary to stop conditions they might not like, conditions that would protect the rights and day-to-day living conditions of a local people, you should feel uncomfortable about granting planning approval.
The situation with the current access road, which is owned by the applicant, but part of it not included in the red outline of the site, is causing concern for all those that have to use it. The road is deteriorating badly and is unsafe to use. I believe the applicants have owned the site and the road for almost 2 years, and despite residents' attempts to get them to make repairs, nothing has been done. This is at a time when you would expect someone applying for planning permission would do all they could to show they intend to be fair to others who are affected by their proposals. If they aren't prepared to engage at this stage, what hope is there that they will act reasonably or follow conditions of approval over safe access, working hours, and other matters that affect local residents? We have found with the Liddy-Moore development site that developers can go rogue and do what they feel like. It has been almost a daily occurrence that working hours are breached, even with lorries lining up to deliver to the site before 6 a.m, making it dangerous for all, particularly young children going to school. I'm sure you're aware these conditions are there to protect the rights and amenity of those most affected by the work. I don't feel enough is being done to ensure those rights are protected. So on this scheme, you have to weigh up if you feel the rights of those most affected are likely to be protected, and ensure the routes to do this are robust. In granting an approval of this nature, I know you know that you need to balance the benefits of the development with the likely impacts. I cannot see how you can feel there are suitable protection in place at the moment with an applicant that seems cannot be trusted to meet their legal obligations towards others.
Mr. Mitchell, you've had your 3 minutes. If you bring your remarks to a close, please.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you will defer this application subject to appropriate undertakings being made by the applicant that can properly control that can be properly controlled, and subject to the technical failures of the application being corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and the last public speaker on this is Matthew Kendrick, please. Mr. Kendrick.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So when you're ready and you start speaking, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just on the red line point, the red line was established at outline stage. That's not changed. There is no issue with the red line boundary. This site's been considered to be acceptable by both the local planning inspector and, following that, West Somerset councillors in granting outline planning permission for the site. The proposals in front of you now demonstrate how those outline plans have been carefully refined over the years to create an outstanding new development, delivering modern, sustainable homes and getting local people on the housing ladder. The access that's been discussed about via Doniford Road has previously been approved at outline stage, and that has not changed. What we should be focusing on today is whether the other parameters of the outline permission have been followed and whether detailed designs presented are acceptable. Firstly, the outline planning permission set parameters relating to heights and locations of buildings to ensure no adverse impact on the landscape. Edenstone have not only adhered to those, but they've gone further, as we've seen, by providing bungalows on higher parts of the site, which provide an even more sensitive development and much needed housing for older people. Secondly, we've engaged proactively and positively with the design review panel, and extensive discussions with the council landscape and urban design officers have led to the scheme you see today that they are supportive of. This has involved the introduction of additional stone properties and chimneys as requested by Williton Council. Detailed engineering details have also been supplied to show the site drainage will work and demonstrate how surface water from the site will be reduced to rates that are below that which currently leave it. Therefore, surface water problems in the area will be alleviated by the scheme, not increased, as some objectors mention. The development also creates a vibrant hilltop park, which incorporates play areas, orchards, seating that takes advantage of views out over the Bristol Channel. This public open space is in excess of what would normally be required for a development of this size and will be a great asset to the wider town, not just residents of the new development. We're delighted officers agree, stating the park will be a beautiful and enjoyable place. We know the concerns relating to the condition of the roads that run through the site, as mentioned by Mr. Mitchell. Because these are currently unadopted and obligations to repair them fall between a number of different parties, a complicated legacy from when the site was owned by the MOD. Granting permission today solves this issue because new adopted roads will run through the site and be delivered by Edenstone. We are also working with members of the local community to agree the repair works in the interim that will provide the temporary solution in advance of the development road being completed. These repairs will be carried out in the next month if planning permission is granted today. And I've actually seen there's a meeting being held next month to agree those with local residents, and I'll extend the invite to that to Mr. Mitchell. Finally, after listening to initial concerns from the Council's Affordable Housing Department, we worked hard to revise the affordable proposals, and your officers are now happy with those. The development will provide 49 affordable homes, 80% of which will be social rent and 20% shared ownership. We're meeting an identified need for such homes, allowing young people to take their first step onto the housing ladder, or families to secure themselves a quality home without compromise. In conclusion,
Had your three, would you be kind enough to bring your remarks to a close, sir?
no problem. In conclusion, we've worked very hard over many years to ensure this development is high quality, responds positively to the outline permission parameters, and most importantly, delivers the affordable homes the area desperately needs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. Okay, I'm going to bring the solicitor in at this point, and then I'll go to the councillors. Martin.
Yes, Chair. In terms of the public speaking, mention was made about the applicant or the developer and the potential trustworthiness of individuals. Planning isn't about that, it's about land use decisions. So I'd ask you to not have regard to that in your considerations. You merely are looking at the application before you based on its planning merits in land use terms.
Okay, thank you, Martin. The first councillor to catch my eye was Gwil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of brief points. I hesitate to teach my grandmother to suck eggs, but should we have had an extension of time by now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh gosh, we're still in the 90 minutes, are we? Right. Now the second point is in relation to, I think it's page 585 on the one I'm looking at. The planning balance and conclusion 12.1. The general effect of paragraph 11 of the MPPF is in the absence of relevant or up-to-date development plan policies is tilted in favour of the grant's permission. Now, I think that's the first time I've seen that sort of sentence articulated.
This is the tilted balance.
I appreciate the tilted balance, but I think the point I'm getting at is that are both our local plans now regarded as so far out of date that the MPPF is the overriding consideration, shall we say? And I assume that Martin would come in on this.
Yeah, in terms of the tilted balance in paragraph 11, where it says out of date, if you don't have a 5-year housing land supply in your particular area, whether it's the Somerset West area or the Old Taunton Deane area, your policies are deemed to be out of date. Okay, so it's a slightly different nuance. So it's not saying that the plan itself is out of date, it's the fact you haven't got a 5-year housing land supply. Effect.
Okay, councillors. Any other councillors wishing to comment on this application? Andrew Hadley.
Thank you, Chair. I've just been looking through this report, and there's been a lot made of the road and the state of the road and access and everything else, and yet looking at the report, highways haven't made any comment and raised no objections. So I find it would be very, very difficult for us to refuse on a highway issue. Going back to our previous application, I was looking at the affordable housing, and actually they do seem in this application to have done things considerably better, should I say. So I'm happy with that. So
each application needs to be judged.
I know it does. I'm just saying that these appear to have made a good example of what you should have done. I struggle to find any planning reasons to actually object to this. So based on that, I would actually propose that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you. I think the last speaker did say about the road that once it's adopted, it will be up to highway standards. So that a lot of those issues that have come about should hopefully be resolved. It did like the design of the houses. I think they look great. So I'll be happy to second Andy's proposal to grant permission. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to comment on this? Okay, well, we've had a proposal and a seconder that we accept the officer's recommendation. Can I see those in favour, please? That's unanimous.
Yes,
Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, sorry, which?
Need to get those.
Oh, yes, yes. Councillor Woods needs to return. We're going to take a 5-minute break at this point, okay? And I'll explain the extension. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to take your seats again and pay attention, thank you. Right, we're in a situation where we are theoretically out of time, being just past 6 o'clock. However, because of the problems with IT at the beginning of the meeting and the breaks, we have lost 37 minutes. So we have now 37 minutes to get through the rest of the agenda without causing enormous problems, which I've got something up my sleeve which I can't use, but only if I have to. So I'm going to start the meeting again now, and we are going to try and get through the last items on our agenda in 37 minutes, please, ladies and gentlemen. So please keep your comments to the point and succinct. Thank you very much. Mr. Pick, good afternoon to you, Anthony. Welcome to the committee. And this is item 9 on our agenda, which is 05/23/0030, which is the change of use from land from agricultural to residential for the siting of 4 gypsy pitches with associated hard standing and the erection of 2 day room buildings and 4 bin and cycle stores at the Gables, Wellington Road, Bradford-on-Tone. Anthony, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, that's the description. So it's the change of use of an existing agricultural paddock at the moment for 4 gypsy pitches. So moving on to the application site identified in red, got the residential property known as the Gables under the ownership of the applicant. Move on to the context plan. So the zoomed in one, so just so we can see where we're at the application site in red. It's the Gables property there to the south, Runwell Farm Shop to the east, and Tavernier Park residential park homes. So on a wider context, again, application site in red, Runwell Farm Shop, and then about half a mile to the east is the Orchard Grove residential development. Access is onto the A38. So again, plan just showing the application site in red and showing the settlement boundary, half a mile to the east. Just some context from an appeal decision which relates to highways. Essentially in June 2013, there was planning inspector allowed an appeal for motor vehicle repair and sales in the hatched area. So this is the property itself, the Gables, and then the application site is behind to the north. There's a little dot here where the inspector also allowed 1 car to be advertised for sale, pretty much in the sort of visibility space, in the access point. So in terms of the permanent development, we've got 2 day room buildings, which is divided into 1 day room per pitch. And we've also got, so that's going to be a brick and tile. And we've got a cycle bin store, which will be clad in timber for each of the pitches. Onto the site photograph. So looking west towards Wellington. So since the appeal, the access has been enlarged. And then in easterly direction towards Taunton. And some wider context views. So now we're looking between Runwell Farm Shop and the application site. So that's the Gables, the residential property. We've got the orchard in between, and the development proposal will be tucked in somewhere around here behind. From the other way, we've got quite a lot of screening as you come around the A38 and Tavernier Park. So it's pretty intensive sort of vegetation along the A38, and then you see the Gables, and again The application site is behind. Onto the site photos itself. So that's where the existing sort of car business sales has historically been. And we've got the paddock land here with existing hedgerow vegetation along the side and rear boundaries, which will be reinforced as part of the proposal. So the key issues are, so it's going to be, I see four pitches. Talk to 1 second. Talked about the site layout plan. So just going back to that one. So what we have is 4 static mobile homes for each pitch. To the rear, we've got 2 of the day room buildings, the 4 touring car parking to the north, and the revised plan that came in since the original is that retain some more of the grass landscaping area, and then the plan also shows new landscape planting. But just go to those key considerations. So in terms of landscaping, it's pretty well screened from the A38. In terms of residential amenity, you're looking at over 90 metres between the site and the nearest properties. Highway safety is one of the key issues that's being raised as part of the public consultation. I think when you go back to the appeal decision on the site, and John will probably talk about highways, at that point the council objected to the highway access, but the inspector allowed it. So we've now got an existing established access which has been improved since that point in time. In terms of the intensification, it's considered to be relatively minor in terms of traffic movements, and therefore there's no objection raised from highways. But looking at gypsy and travellers, I think we've got a shortfall of around 72 pitches, which is pretty significant in terms of the GTAA. So the planning balance is weighed in favour of supporting this unless there's any significant landscape or other harm, and not as per the officer recommendation, it is one of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay, I only have one public speaker on that, and that is the local divisional member, Councillor John Hunt. John, if you'd like to come to the microphone, get yourself comfortable, push the right-hand button, and then your time starts. Okay.
Right, good afternoon to my fellow councillors and the many residents watching this either online or on the live or on the recording. Firstly, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this application before the committee today, and to Senior Planning Officer Anthony Pick for fielding a considerable number of questions from concerned residents and indeed myself. If I could please ask that you don't see me as just one person, but you see me as 38 people, 38 residents, all of whom would prefer to remain anonymous, asking me to represent their objections to this application. On Friday, the 10th of November last year, I was invited to attend a residents' meeting to hear the views of local people regarding this application. During the well-attended meeting, I did point out that whether or not I agreed with the residents' objections, as their elected Somerset councillor, I felt it was my duty to represent their views. At the end of the meeting, 38 of the attendees agreed on an overall objection shown as A in the planning portal submission made on their behalf by me on the 14th of November last year. I've also been asked by numerous local residents to put forward their individual objections to this application. To clarify, objection A is therefore the objection on behalf of the 38 residents who attended the public meeting. Objections B to H in my submission are further objections from residents who have again asked me to respect their anonymity. Objection A is about road safety and road access. The entrance exit is located very close to a bend. I did enclose an image, which I'm sure you've seen, and you saw some of the pictures there on the A38. Exiting the site will be problematic with long vehicle and caravan combinations, having to take time to exit if turning left, whilst exiting right could potentially present a wall to oncoming traffic travelling at or in excess of the current 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. Clearly, the situation will be the same, but in reverse on entry. These scenarios would of course be greatly exaggerated in poor weather conditions. Objections shown as B to H are further objections from residents who have asked me to submit their concerns whilst respecting their anonymity. As I assume you will all have read these on the portal, and due to time limitations here, I will not read them now. In 2016, a previous planning application at a farm in Rumwell was withdrawn because of a number of concerns from highways, mostly linked to the A38 access. Taking into consideration the substantial traffic increase since 2016, surely this problem is even more of a concern now. And finally, could I please ask that if this application is granted, that a recommendation be submitted to Somerset Council for the current speed limit of 50 miles an hour to be reduced on safety grounds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Okay, councillors. Harrow.
Thank you. I think where I'm at on this is I do agree with John that there are safety issues with the A38, and I would absolutely support a reduction of the speed limit, because when you're coming along there, you are kind of coming into Taunton. You've got Devonia Park, you've got a significant number of residents there. We're now going to have gypsy residents potentially if this gets passed. There's a lot of people using the Rumwell Farm Shop. I just looked up just now the sort of crash, that crash website, and there are a number of collisions shown up by Rumwell Farm, and then a couple down the road, and then further up. And really, you have to ask yourself, 50? Really? So I would absolutely, I don't think we can do anything about that today, but I would absolutely support that. I think where I'm at on this is, and I do know the area because I'm also the other divisional whatever, but I've been keeping my powder dry because it is tricky. But I think that we ought to grant approval, because what weighs particularly on my mind is the absolute lack of sites. What is it, over 70? We're lacking, and I've tried sort of Googling and trying to find plots of land saying, can we please buy this? Could we please do this? And there's always some problem with it. We've got a massive issue with this, and we know what happens when people then rock up and decide to stay where actually there isn't the facilities and there isn't the infrastructure, and what happens as a result of that, it's not great. So I do think we have a duty to kind of be a bit proactive, and when you've got an actual traveller family who have got land and are willing to put in proper quality pitches, then I think that's almost like looking a gift horse in the mouth, I'm afraid. So I think that's where I'm at on this. I think that there is an overriding need for more pitches, and even if we were to turn it down, I think they could probably appeal and they would win, certainly if it was on highways grounds. As while I agree the highway scenario is not perfect, I'm not sure that it quite meets the test of significant harm, because after all, the caravans will be coming in, and then most of them will be staying there. They'll be static, and yeah, there might be the odd touring one, but it's not going to increase the traffic movements to the extent that I think that you could say that there's a significant adverse impact on highways grounds. So I think where I'm at is I think we should support it, but also out with this meeting, I will be absolutely arguing for a reduction in the speed limit. It's way too 50 is too much.
Harrow, is that a proposal to accept the application?
Yes, I might as well.
Thank you.
The
next councillor on my list is Rosemary.
Yeah, I have a question on this one. Is this going to be a commercial site or a residential site? Because the lifestyle of travellers tends to be between those two things. And as the Gables has commercial now at appeal, I wondered if actually, rather than residential, we should be looking at this as commercial.
Would you care to answer that?
Yes, as when the inspector previously approved the commercial, it was limited to the hatched area for the car sales. So there was essentially a combination. So it's residential, agricultural, and the sale repair. So this is for permanent gypsy and traveller pitches. So it'll be residential in terms of this application.
Okay, I would remind everybody that at appeal, the planning inspector agreed or felt that the access on that bend was suitable. Now, I don't know if Mr. Fellingham wants to come in at this point.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just echoing some of the points that Mr. Pick and yourself have just raised. Obviously, as has been alluded to in the report and as members have heard, there was the 2013 planning appeal, which was upheld by the inspector, which felt that the access was acceptable. Obviously, as officers, we have to take that into consideration when making our responses to planning applications. We felt that given the nature of the appeal being accepted, that in highways terms, the access was found to be acceptable. And going back to the comments in relation to accidents, obviously for the highways point of view, we are only allowed to take things back for 5 years in terms of what we have on our systems. I appreciate that CrashNet does go back considerably further, but we can only take into account accidents that have happened within the last 5 years. And there's been a couple of slight incidents at the Runwell Junction, but if you read the detail, that's about vehicles not slowing down or paying due care attention. And there was also one slightly further down in 2021, again, was more related to vehicles on the main route rather than actually vehicles coming out of the junction. As such, on balance, the Highway Authority felt that it was acceptable to raise no objection to this scheme.
Okay, thank you. Andy Sully.
I'm happy to second Caroline Ellis's proposal, but got just a quick question. These day rooms, are they, so people will sleep in the caravans at night, but then use the daytimes in the day, use the day rooms in the daytime? Is that how it's going to work? It's a bit.
My understanding, yeah, it's a general sort of part of the culture in terms of bathroom, etc. Is that they'll always go to an external building, being a day room, and then also for family meals, etc.
Okay, so lovely. Thank you for answering that, and I'm happy to second Caroline's. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Will.
Yeah, just a small point. It wasn't clear from the report, unless I've missed it, as to whether the car business is going to be replaced by this or whether it will be continuing.
Yeah, so at the moment they do have a planning approval for the car sales. It's not actively there at the moment, but they have permission to do that. So this will be separate to that. So the hatched area is the car sales, and then to the west is where the post caravan pitches will be.
Okay. Norman.
Don, sorry, my apologies. Lighting, item 1 of the conditions, beam orientation and brightness. I think we should, as we've got a dark skies policy in our planning policies, to have it a bit better specified than that, and that is down lighting, LED lighting, to prevent floodlights, which could interfere with the main road as well. So we are following a dark skies policy.
Okay, is that a proposal for an additional condition, Norman?
Yes, please, sir.
Anthony, do you want to comment on that?
I suppose the site's fairly well set back from the road. The condition will be recommended from our ecologists, so that would be a normal standard condition to deal with bats and wildlife. So as part of that, it should be luminance, and how the beams in terms of being downlight should be part and parcel of the lighting scheme.
Does that satisfy your concerns, Norman?
No, because beam orientation is flexible. Downlighting is a bit more definitive. And it's what is required on modern LED with roads, etc. now.
Chair, it's up to the proposer and seconders as to whether they wish to add that as an additional condition, in addition to the condition.
Okay, so that's going to be added to we look at downlighting as an additional condition. Okay, are there any other councillors that wish to comment on this? No? Okay, in that case, I'd like to go to the proposal, which is that we accept the officer's recommendation with the addition of the lighting condition. It's been proposed and seconded. Can I see those in favour? Unanimous. Okay, that's been passed. Thank you very much. We're going to have a very swift change round now to the final item on our agenda. Who's taking this? Sarah, are you taking this? Oh, Anna Marie. All right, Anna Marie, case officer's here. Excellent. Okay. I'm going to ignore that. Right, we're on agenda item 10 and 11 in our pack. They are inextricably linked. I'm going to assume that we're going to take them as one, although we'll vote on them completely. Anna Marie, good afternoon, good evening to you as it is now. We've got about 14 minutes. Okay. Then don't move, just keep prodding the right buttons.
Conscious about the time, so I'm going to go through this really quickly. Yeah, sure. Okay, is that better? Thank you. So this application is the main application for change of use, and it's also the listed building application. So the application is for change of use of part residential and part community use to full residential use with demolition of 3 extensions with various repairs and restorations, erection of ground and first floor extensions and detached garage, and installation of solar panels. Okay. So this is the second slide. So 17 Trinity Street is a 3-story grade 2 listed building located centrally within Taunton Town Centre boundary. There are a number of listed buildings in the vicinity of the site. There's the Holy Trinity Church, which is located opposite the site. There are further listed buildings to the north of the site. And this is the Holy Trinity Church. So this is the photo of the street elevation. The property has been converted and extended extensively at ground floor level. The lawful use of the ground and first floor is a social club, and such uses are protected under Site Allocations Development Management Plan Policy C. There is a residential flat at second floor level. So in terms of background, the social club ceased trading in 2019, and the property has been empty and lacking in maintenance since. The building is currently in a poor condition, with much of its contents, such as copper piping and radiators, having been removed, and the building has been left in a state of disrepair. The new owners who purchased the property in August 2023 are seeking a change of use of the building to revert the use back to sole residential use as a single dwelling house, which was the original function of the property, alongside a number of alterations and general refurbishment of the property. So this overhead view shows the sort of rear extensions, which are modern. So the proposal is to demolish all of those extensions to the rear. They're shown here in hatch. So yeah, so the main part of the proposal is demolition of the modern extensions, which are not mentioned in the listing. And the proposal also includes demolition and rebuilding of one single-story extension to the rear of the property, which can be seen here. And also a new porch to the south elevation. So in terms of the layout, this will be 3-bedroom property. So this photo shows the rear elevation. So all of those buildings will be demolished. And this is the existing south-facing side extensions with a parapet roof, and it's proposed to have solar panels on that roof, which can be seen on this on the southern elevation. So it's the other main part of their proposals are actually building a new garage, which can be seen here on the site plan as well. Okay, so I'm just showing some of these photos. So this is the existing porch. This is proposed to be replaced with the new porch. This picture shows the existing rear elevation, and there's this first floor projection which is rendered. So it's proposed to extend that a little bit further to the west to include a shower. So this is the entrance to the property. Driveway and modern extensions which will be demolished. So these are some of the photos of the internal fabric of the buildings. You can see it's quite damaged internally. So the key considerations are for the change of use. Despite of marketing, there's been little interest in the property from community groups, given the condition of the building and the cost required to bring it back to habitable condition. So whilst the loss of community use is regretted, the proposal would secure the long-term preservation of the listed building. And it's considered that the proposal meets the criteria of policy C for protection of community facilities of the site allocations and development management plan. In terms of the heritage impact, the council's conservation officer is supportive of the proposals. It's considered that the modern extensions to the building have eroded its appearance and architectural interest, as well as the setting of the adjacent heritage assets. So therefore, the removal of some of these elements from the complex would help in terms of enhancing the setting of the listed building and the adjacent heritage assets. So the principle of development of the site is welcomed, and the restoration works would prevent further deterioration of the historic fabric. This is in line with the NPP and policy CPA of their core strategy. In terms of the other planning matters, there will be no. It's considered that there will be no adverse impacts on ecology, highway safety, flood risk, residential amenity, and additionally, this proposal has been screened out from requiring habitat regulations assessment and is not considered to be caught by phosphates due to the nature of the proposal. So for those reasons, this planning application and the associated listed building application are recommended for conditional approval. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Derek, followed by Andy Solly, please. Derek.
Well, it's always sad to lose a social club. I've played snooker in away matches here, and I've often bemoaned the loss of tables and places to play in Taunton. But the fact is, this social club isn't coming back, and the building is rotting, and the modern bits were the bad bits. And what this proposal does is breathe life into a nice old building, a listed building, take away the unsympathetically modern added bits and put something better on instead. As far as I'm concerned, this is a no-brainer, and I'm happy to propose that we recommend it.
Thank you.
Sorry, propose that we approve it.
Absolutely. Andy Solly.
I'm very happy to second Derek's proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I propose that we take both, be perverse to pass one and not pass the listed building. So I propose that we take both 10 and 11 together on a single vote. Are you both happy to propose and second both items? Lovely. Okay, in that case, I can't see any other officers. No, that's it. Excellent. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Sarah, you now have 3 minutes to do the update for the appeals.
Very quickly, one appeal against a decision for Ruckmore Farm in Bishop's Hull. It was for development of a single-storey, low-impact, carbon-positive house to be built within the garden curtilage of an existing house with a new sewage treatment plant to provide nutrient neutrality for 5 existing dwellings. 2 main issues, character and appearance of the area and potential for future occupants to access services and facilities. And the inspector dismissed the appeal, having found that it didn't enhance the character or appearance of the area and the location of the site did not provide sort of sustainable access to facilities other than by car.
No, I just wanted to say that Roughmore was my old office, my old place of work, and I spent many happy years there. And it's a lovely garden and a lovely farmhouse, and it's probably the right result, but I'll look it up online. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, anybody got any other questions? No, in that case, I'd like to thank you all very much, and particularly because we managed to get through it just in time. Thank you.